2 minutes. Good morning and a post-Merry Christmas to one and all. Welcome to Radio Westchester. We are the radio station at the train station. Thank you very much for listening this morning. It is Thursday, December 26th. 2019. We hope you all had a great holiday. This, as we come into the fourth day of Hanukkah, we hope all of you enjoy your Hanukkah celebrations as well. Right now it's 36 degrees, only a 20% chance of rain today, getting up to 44, mostly cloudy though today. The wind out of the east-northeast, 5 to 10 miles an hour. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. Welcome to the program once again. Let's take a look at our headlines. Hudson Valley residents are expected to hit the shopping centers today on the biggest return day of the year, and it should be interesting. What will you turn into cash? A Yonkers detective will plead guilty in a perjury case. In Mount Vernon, a restaurant is cited for dumping when a worker pours waste down the drain. That's down the sewer drain outside. And the Janitors Union reaches a new deal, avoids a strike in the lower Hudson Valley. We'll tell you about Dylan Betances joining the Mets. We'll talk a little bit about the Knicks this morning. And, well, this is unusual, but a world-famous skier has proposed to a hockey player. Those stories coming up. First, we go to the traffic. Stay right with us. Did I say traffic? I do that all the time. It's really the weather. Welcome. And the weather this morning is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew. United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. 36, as we said, 20% chance of rain, mostly cloudy today. I don't think you'll see any rain. Tonight, mostly cloudy. The temperature will be 39 degrees. As we move into Friday, mostly cloudy with a few light showers or sprinkles. The temperature 49. The wind will be out of the south-southwest, 5 to 10. Now, Saturday, a mixture of sun and clouds. It'll be pretty warm. The high will be 49 degrees. The overnight low will be 35 degrees. And, of course, this morning, our top of the hour, our news and so forth, is brought to you by Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne and Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars, right over there at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days a week, They're open today. You'll want your cigars for the weekend. Let's get to our stories right now. With presents being unwrapped across the Hudson Valley, there are bound to be some gifts that just don't make the cut. That's why the day after Christmas is known as the busiest return day of the year. People all across the area will be rushing to local shopping centers to exchange clothes that don't fit and gadgets that don't work, or obviously stuff that people just don't want. Consumer Reports has some tips that can make holiday returns less stressful. They say gift getters should not open the box their presents came in because without the original packing, customers may be charged a restocking fee. They also say that it's extra important to keep receipts so that you can get a refund instead of just store credit. It's also important to bring an ID card with you. For those who are planning to hit shopping centers, expect a big crowd, not only for returns, but also for post-holiday sales, Christmas ornaments, etc., etc. Happy shopping. Again, though, look to turn it into cash. It could be an income opportunity, and no one's, well, it's one of the few things the tax people won't get their hands on. A Yonkers detective who was a member of a drug enforcement administration in Yonkers is expected to plead guilty following a perjury investigation and arrest of another Bronx man. This in the Journal News this morning. Detective Sean Fogarty's role in the case has forced him into retirement, which takes effect today. He and another task force member, Mount Vernon Detective Johanna Santos, and the NYPD officer John Doherty were involved in the April 2018 arrest of one Calvin Powell. Powell's subsequent prosecution forced him to spend nearly 5 months at Rikers until charges were dropped, during which his father died and Powell could not attend the funeral, according to the lawsuit brought by Powell against the United States, New York City, Fogarty, Santos, Doherty, and others. Fogarty, 45, applied for retirement with the state comptroller's office on December 11, the same day that the lawsuit was filed in U.S. District Court. And let's see, we are coming up on 7/16. A Mount Vernon chicken restaurateur was accused of illegal dumping after video captured a worker pouring kitchen waste into a storm drain in front of the business. Funny, I've seen that before. I never gave it much thought. At any rate, this in Aloha today. Chicken Hut at Prospect Street and North 3rd Avenue faces fines up to $11,000 after the City Department of Public Works last week issued a pair of summonses alleging illegal discharge and dumping. The video was taken by an unidentified city worker who saw the dumping and filmed it with his cell phone. By the way, let's correct that. That was a city resident. He then sent it to Councilwoman Delia Farquharson, who passed it along to the DPW commissioner. The video showed one man pouring 2 buckets of yellowish waste into the drain. Local janitors received a holiday gift. This happened on Monday when their union struck a deal to avoid thousands of workers striking in the lower Hudson Valley. A union bargaining committee from the SEIU 32BJ represented more than 3,800 or 3,000 janitors, I should say, in the region reached a tentative contract agreement with an industry group negotiating. So good for them. They got their Christmas gift. Now, it's ever interesting, even though 10 people have applied for the congressional seat up in the 37th District to be vacated by Nita Lowey as she retires, the assemblyman who's considered the leader, at least right now, by many, I should say, the assemblyman who is favored to win the race, at least by some cognoscente, well, people now are stepping up to run for his assembly seat. Chappaqua lawyer Kristen Browd wants to fill the position vacated by Assemblyman David Buchwald. Buchwald is now running for the Nita Lowey seat, as we said. Browdy is an Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist who says what separates her from her competitors, I can't read this morning, is that she knows how to build a coalition. She says her run for office started with a conversation she had with her now 16-year-old son, which centered on what she says is students' constant fear of becoming a school shooting victim. So The takeaway from all this out of News 12 today is Kristen Broud, or Browdy. We don't know for sure how to pronounce it. She's a new face for us, a new voice, if you will. She's running for Buchwald's seat. And I don't blame her. The more you do the news and you see what's going on, it gives you the bug. Be careful, those of you who are in county legislator seats here in New Rochelle. We'll leave it at that. City lawmakers want to impose a gentrification tax. This out of New York City this morning and posted in the New York Post. Here's one thing that unites polls across the political divide, a gentrification tax, a bipartisan group of city lawmakers to push Albany to approve tweaks to the state tax law that would allow them to hit new home buyers with tax bills based on the actual market prices of their properties. Woohoo! The coalition of 13 Republican and Democratic city council members said the taxes would not go up for existing owners. All right, we're going to take a look as we pass through now. 7:17. We'll be talking with Vince Russo in a couple of minutes. This was a surprise story. Ari Behn, a former member of Norway's royal family who was one of Kevin Spacey's sexual assault accusers, died by suicide yesterday. This, according to his manager. He was 47 years old. The successful Danish author was married to Norway's Princess Martha Louise between 2002 and 2017. They have 3 daughters, the youngest of whom is 11. Martha Louise, 48, is the eldest child of King Harold and the Queen Sonia, and 4th in line to the throne. We don't care about that. But meanwhile, Ben is publishing his first book, a collection of short stories listed sad as hell. In 1999, he also penned several novels and plays. In December 2017, he came forward to accuse Spacey, 60, of groping him under a table at a Nobel Peace Prize concert in 2017. So, one less witness, I guess. A quick look at sports. The Knicks are eyeing a young ball player by the name of Karl Anthony Towns, and a lot has changed, though, for the worse since Christmas when the Knicks played the Bucks, waiting for Kristaps Porzingis' return from knee surgery. At any rate, this young ball player is someone they have their sights on to be their new superstar. And as you know, the Mets took a flyer on Dylan Betances, $10 million guaranteed. A lot of people who know Dylan Betances, we've interviewed him, hope he does well for the Mets. He really wasn't needed because of the Yankee bullpen. He had some questionable injuries last year, that one of an Achilles tendon after he came back from shoulder surgery. Everyone hopes that this man, and when we say questionable, we don't mean that it's questionable they had them. It's that it raises questions for his ongoing health. And here's a story for you. We know Vince is coming on. He was a hockey star when he was young. We wonder, but did his wife propose to him? Lindsey Vonn, the former athletic, the former Olympic star, has proposed to hockey star and fiance PK Subban. And she says, well, why can't a woman do it? That's her position. We talked about equality, but of course, our accent speaker, oh, here he is. Let's get him on the line, and we'll talk with you in a moment. Don't you go anywhere, Mr. Russo. We'll be with you in a moment. I want to finish my Lindsey Vonn story. She's this beautiful woman who proposed to a hockey star. Along with the announcement, Vonn posted 2 photos of her and Subban posing in front of their Christmas tree and their dogs. But again, she is saying, why can't I? Why should men get engagement rings too? And this is what PK deserves. So she's giving him an engagement ring along with everything else. All right, we need to take another look at the weather before we take our first phone call. It is 36 across the Sound Shore. It's going to get up to 44 today, but it'll be mostly cloudy. The temperature leveling off at about 43. The temperature will be 39 tonight, though mostly cloudy, but still comfortable weather. We move into Friday. Where did the week go? Mostly cloudy with a few light showers or sprinkles. The temperature will be 49 degrees. The wind will be out of the south-southwest at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Saturday, a mixture of sun and clouds. The wind will be 49. The overnight will be 35 degrees. And of course, this weather was brought to you exclusively by our friends at United Hebrew. They are an award winning home for the aged, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And the top of the hour is also brought to you by Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne and Kahn. Plug in virtual reality and Dominic's Fine Cigars. And here we are. This is Radio Westchester. We are the radio station at the train station. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone, and it's great to be with you again as we head towards the end of the year. Let's take our first call the day after Christmas. Vince, good morning.
Good morning, Robert. I thought I had some trouble.
No, you did. We started late.
On Facebook.
We started late. This is a holiday week version of the show. Part of some of the experimenting we do, seeing if a 7 o'clock start will do what we like. So.
Well, but I did get you, so here we are. I saw the thing about Lindsey Vonn and PK Subban. PK is one of my favorite players. Loved him when he was with Montreal. Wish he was still there. And, he likes to joke around a lot. And during the summer, he put out I think something on, not on YouTube, but on Facebook or whatever. And he said, we're just hanging out by the pool, relaxing and, blah, blah, blah. And he takes off his robe and he's wearing her bikini.
Oh, my goodness.
Bob, it is something you cannot unsee.
No, do I need to rip my eyes out after I see it?
Oh my God! And he's just hysterical. I mean, he's got this ear-to-ear grin, and he is just laughing like crazy. He's wearing her bikini. It was like, oh boy, PK,
Well, I've got to see that. By the way, he seems to be playing much better than he had been. So
that beginning of the season, he didn't play all that well, and the Devils in general didn't play well. Although on paper they had a very good team, they ended up getting rid of Taylor Hall. He got shipped out to Arizona. Who knows? Maybe a little bit of a shakeup will knock the cobwebs out. I don't know, but they're not. The team in general is not doing that well. Certainly not as well as they should be with the personnel they have.
Well, no, and you know what? They have very uneven personnel. I think they kind of broke with their original commitment. They had been engaged in a rebuilding that seemed like it was going well. They had the number one draft choice a couple of years in a row or close to it. And then all of a sudden they decided, not that they're not good hockey players, but to go after star power and veterans. And sometimes that doesn't mix. The Rangers probably have it right. They make a lot of mistakes, but it's all young guys. And even their anchor older players, a guy like Kreider. Heck, Kreider still isn't become, he's a solid NHL player, but he's never been a consistent player. For me, he's still trade bait. My grandson and I, that pain in the butt, he and I argue about Kreider all the time. Not that I don't think Kreider's good. On some nights, he's the best player on the rink, but he's like a poor man's Vic Hatfield without the fighting. He goes up and down his lane. He doesn't have good hands. He can fly and he's strong. So if he doesn't play hard, see, Vic Hatfield did every night. Some nights you can't even find him on the scorecard or see him on the rink.
Yeah, I don't like Kreider because I think he's a very dirty player.
Oh, no. No. You're not going to, folks. You know what this is? This is a guy who was wounded, snowflakeish. About 5 years ago when Kreider was a rookie, he slid into his goalie, and he's never forgiven him. No, I wish he was a dirty player, with all due respect.
But he did that. No, but he not only did
he
do
plays
that
like a
him,
kitten.
When Andrei Markov came back from a knee injury, Markov lost the whole season to a knee injury. I think in like the fourth game that he played the next season, Kreider put him out again with a dirty check. No, I don't like the guy at all.
I know you have to see that, but again, do admit you have a right, and I understand why you don't. But it has to do with the way he's treated your your weak little sister. The Canadians. Is that is that true?
Well, those are two examples. Yeah.
Well, we're bringing Ian up here next week, and we're gonna talk some hockey with him. Now he is a diehard Ranger fan, and he's one of those Ranger fans that hates all other teams, unlike myself. And unlike, well, no, he's sort of like you now with the Canadians. They got bruised. They got hurt, Bob, and it's not right that Chris Kreider did that to my team. Sorry, I don't know. I'm in a strange mood today. The holiday festivities and all. But we had to these, they're the only, it's interesting. They have a pretty good union now, and they didn't play on Christmas. But you know what? The holidays are for entertainment. Play on Christmas. We work on Christmas and radio and TV. We work. The trains are running. The cops are running. I want my hockey.
Yeah, but if you look
Boy,
at
who's whining now, Robert?
You can look at radio and TV. The big stars don't don't work on Christmas. The the main anchor.
Some do.
And all that.
Or we get extra money to fill into them. Now, the day that's really tough for entertainment is New Year's, because then the big names come out. Then they come out to fly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, the NHL is dark on the day before and the day after Christmas. So 3-day hiatus.
Yeah, I do. Do they playing tonight? I don't even have the schedule in front of me. I'm still
No, they're not.
Oh, that's right. Today is the day after Christmas, isn't it? My guest is Vince Russo. You're listening to Radio Westchester. Here we are, the train station, or rather the radio station at the train station. I like that handle. We still await our major, I guess you would call it, Vince, a grand opening, but we're part of a larger grand opening. You see, they're doing all kinds of renovations to the train station to modernize it. And this radio station, this new technological, I don't want to call it wonderland, if you will, but this technological innovation is part of a larger technological innovation here at the station. So we're all looking forward to that. A couple of things in the news is, first of all, where did I had it here? I wanted to ask you about it. And that is that the president... Do you think the president does himself any good? We're not doing a lot of heavy politics. This is a holiday show. But I honestly think that he should let his lawyers fight back for him the way Clinton did. Just go about his business, and then they can say the president's running the country. Do you agree with that?
Well, of course. I mean, if he would just keep his mouth shut, in general, he'd be a lot better off. I mean, he just wants attention. I mean, he just wants to be out there. He doesn't care what kind of publicity he gets, as long as his face is on TV and he's creating some sort of image or whatever that he thinks that he should. I mean, Bob is a very, very small town official. I am just amazed how he can do any of this stuff, and I say that because on my very low level, we're a very tiny little backwater town. The council members are involved, in the day-to-day running of the town, and we have so much stuff to do that I project that, up the chain, what the Assembly and Senate members in the state do, what the freeholders do, then the national level, where it's Congress and the Senate, and how much those people have to do, and then the president. And I cannot believe how this guy has time for all of the nonsense that he engages in, all of the tweeting and watching TV and all this other stuff.
Ronald Reagan
was time for it. I don't have time on my level.
Ronald Reagan famously delegated like that too. Now he didn't. He wasn't engaged in the kind of public discourse that the president is, but he let other people run their departments. I mean, it's quite doable, Vince, to do what he does.
Well, he let other people.
It's just, I think he hurts himself doing it. I think he could walk right through this impeachment if he lets the Republicans do what they want to do.
Reagan let the department heads run their departments, but he read the briefing papers. He was up on what's going on around the world, what problems the U.S. is facing, what security issues are happening day to day. He was pretty much up on that stuff. Trump, like, he's, oh, I can't be bothered reading this stuff.
Well,
I mean,
that's
how could you do the job? It's just baffling to me.
all right. Let's go now more to more local issues as we pass through. And let me double check my time here. It is 7:34. We'll be hearing from John Bailey in a little bit, probably a little late, but we'll get to him. In here in New Rochelle, and I know you have, I don't know why you don't have these issues in your school district, but we have this debate, this tension between far left is probably too general a term. So we'll say some representatives of the far left that want to model our school system like the New York City school system. Do you have any pressure like that in your northern New Jersey suburb?
No, who would want to be like the New York City school system?
Well, that's
I mean,
my
why would they
point,
do
but
that?
that's what I keep the
Uh,
question I keep raising.
no, no, we don't have that. And of course, again, it's a matter of scale. We only have, we have one high school, one middle school, and one primary school, and the issues that we face, of course, are our rankings with in the state, by the New Jersey Monthly or whoever does these kind of rankings. And if it dips a little bit, I mean the school board just gets blasted, and we have very good schools. I mean, we pay a lot of money, but our schools are very well run, I think, and there's always some issues. There's always some things that someone's not going to like, but we don't have much politics involved in our schools.
Do you
It's
have any
more.
of those groups that are against testing or that are for, forgiveness of crimes against the state? Oh, you stabbed him in the eye with a pencil. Don't worry about it. He'll be
No,
better next
no,
week.
because we don't have those issues.
Okay.
You
Well,
know,
that
we're just a little small, fairly affluent community that doesn't have those kinds of social issues.
okay. One last
What
thing.
we have.
Okay, I'm sorry, Vince.
Okay, go ahead.
No, 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 no,
No,
no,
go ahead.
no. One last thing. I'm preparing for next week's shows as well, and shows later in the week. And the whole issue. Do you make any New Year's resolutions?
No,
Okay, I wanted to ask. All right.
no,
Do you
no, because
do you have any
there's.
hopes for
I
the new
don't know.
year?
Oh boy.
Do you have any hopes for the new year? And
Well,
no, and I don't
I
mean
always
running
hope
away
that.
with Lindsey Vaughn either. But
No, well, look, I would hope that the political situation in our country would turn around, but I don't see that happening. I see it getting worse, and so I mean, I hope people would start to see that we need to be much more tolerant, much more bipartisan, much more engaged in what's going on. But I see the opposite. I mean, it's just more hyper partisanship and name calling, finger pointing, fake news, and all of that other kind of stuff.
well,
So
it sure is interesting. That's for sure. But I'm trying. I don't usually have New Year's resolutions, but I have one professional resolution. In fact, I was listening to some commentary by George Carlin, one of my favorite comedians of all time, and how he survived once he started doing political humor and things of that ilk is to decide not to care. Otherwise, he couldn't function. I'm working
mm,
on it. I don't know if I can succeed at it. I really don't. It's
mm,
enough. The
yeah,
political climate in the country is enough to discourage someone from doing this for a living. Believe me, and I love it, but it really I'm just shocked and and there's something to go around. I people know how I feel about the president, although I acknowledge he's done some things pretty well, and they know how I feel about what New York City schools are doing. Or attitudes are doing to our school systems. Now, both of those things are diametrically on the opposite ends of the political ledger. And
yeah,
but what they both have in common is the imposition Well, in one case, cynicism, because there are things the president does that works, but just because it works doesn't mean that he should do it legitimately, at least in my humble view. And in the case of my friends on the far left, they're trying to impose a utopian vision of forgiveness and other things that make no sense, that don't match logic. And I don't know. My hope for the new year is that I won't let it get to my gut. Good luck with that.
Well, to get back on a lighter note, you mentioned George Carlin,
Yes.
and I take an annual trip up to Montreal to see the Canadians play, and what I try and do is get a book on disc, at the library, and listen to it on the ride up.
Hmm.
Well, one year we got George Carlin. I if, I think the title is "With Jesus You Get Pork Chops."
Oh, gee, yeah,
I think that was
I
the title.
listened to that one. I listened to a sketch of
Bob,
about 12. Yeah.
it it was so funny. My wife and I were laughing so much, and because he reads it, and I thought we were going to go off the road a few times. It was so funny. I mean, just listening to some of the stuff he says, and some of the scenarios, that he kind of creates. It was just really hilarious.
Yeah, well, and I like the way he puts stuff. Well, those are the types of people you just want to hit in the back of the head with a golf club. All right, listen, you have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Vince, everybody, Vince Rousseau, some general
Thanks,
commentary.
Bob. Have a great day.
All right, you take there. I know I'm looking for John, but kind of get John Bailey on here. So I don't know if he's in the catalog yet or not. Yeah, that should be him. Oh, God, I love this system. I can't see. I'm going blind, and it's really killing me. But hey, it is what it is. All righty. He's up next. He is, of course, the White Plains, our man in White Plains. Please welcome the managing editor and publisher of White Plains Citizen.net, John Bailey. Good morning.
Good morning from White Plains, New York, USA, on Boxing Day.
Merry Christmas to you and yours. Now, since you mentioned Boxing Day, tell us, give us the background on Boxing Day. I mean, I know what it is, but I thought it would sound good coming from your humble locale.
Well, Canada is celebrating Boxing Day today. That is basically their Christmas Day. That's when they give gifts. And I always felt it was they get a double shot up in Canada.
Well, that's Canada, but you see, it evolved out of the UK because, well, naturally, the Queen royalty celebrated Christmas, and the next day they gave boxes of gifts to the miserable and the diseased regular people. And yeah, hence Boxing
Right,
Day.
at arm's length, no doubt.
At arm's That's absolutely true. Speaking of monarchs and things, I brought this up to some other people, and I got to bring it up the other day, and I'm going to watch it again. Couldn't sleep. Went to my phone, put Netflix on, and saw The Two Popes, a wonderful movie. And I thought it was one of these, I thought it was some sort of a novel or but it's actually based on the relationship between the two popes, Ratzinger and Bergoglio. Excellent movie.
Very good Italian pronunciations, I might add, and for actually knowing the names. That's great. I did see that movie, and I highly recommend it too. It is a movie with no violence in it.
Well, Bryce, even though I thought I thought that, of course, Mr. The guy that played Hannibal Lecter, he was great, but Bryce was over the top. Bryce is going to get if he doesn't get an Emmy, there's no justice in the world.
Well, there is no justice in the Emmys, Bob. You know that.
Well,
it's a popularity contest. It's a politically correct selection, always.
Well, that's an interesting movie. And folks, you ain't lived until you've seen two popes eating Sicilian pizza in the Sistine Chapel. It's an absolute true story. Just an amazing thing.
But it's terrifically written.
Yes.
It is gripping. It's all talk, pomp, and circumstance, and it is more riveting than any movie I've seen this year.
Yes. And now, previous guest, he and I for
Great
years.
message, too.
Yes, he and I for years, and now it shows our age, but we loved the movie Beckett from 1960, won like 10 Oscars, because it too was more about language and the subtleties of love and connection and honor and religion. But yes, language.
Intelligence and feelings, too.
Heaven forbid,
Intelligence,
yeah. Well, but
feelings, what must be done, what would be good for the church. I mean, those are themes of this movie. And wouldn't it be nice today if all the politicians saw this movie?
yes, because they had different views and they both
All of them.
had conceding views as they found sort of a middle and an understanding that the church needed to go forward. It's really interesting stuff.
Highly conflicting.
Yes, very much so. John Bailey, our guest, we're talking a little bit about movies. Remember, it is Christmas. The light side is a nice side these days. But we do have news coming out of White Plains, and you are our impresario of news coming out of White Plains. What's going on?
Well, the city of White Plains on Monday night, in one of those notorious meetings to pass legislation just before a holiday when nobody is paying attention, actually gave all its workers in the city, union, non-union, a tremendous gift
But
that
they-
will keep on giving
What did they-
forever
what did they
as long
give
as
them?
they live.
What,
They restored the ability to have free medical care to retirees and also non-union and appointed personnel.
who's getting this?
That is huge.
Who's getting this? White Plains employees?
Well, they're getting in 2010 they passed laws saying that if you had joined the city before a certain date, that you would have to pay 15% of your medical benefits, and this affected a lot of retirees.
Wow.
And so this has been going on for 8 years. They actually increased commissioners' salaries to cover that. Okay, but on the other hand, they were sued by the union members to restore those benefits. And we don't know whether this tremendous restoration of medical benefits to basically all would be as a result of a settlement or something. You just don't know that. We don't know why they suddenly decided to do this, but the firemen who are affected by this, retired firemen, have lobbied at the Citizens to be Heard portion of the council
They
meetings
want free
for
benefits.
a few months now. Yes, well, they got them Monday night.
Well, what's interesting
And,
is
it
that.
remains.
Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, well, and it will go in effect in April. Now, what does this mean? It means if you're retired, you were paying about $2,000 a year for those medical benefits to be continued.
Well, that's a lot of money.
But now they don't have to pay that. So basically, this is like the endless bonus.
Whatever happened to reason, John? Or because on one end is what corporate America did. Now, I was with a firm, and again, it's not about me; it's about a dynamic. But since I have first-person comfort with it, we had a pension when I joined them, where you get 60% of your highest 5 years. It was a defined benefit plan, and they paid for our health care. And somewhere around the early to mid 80s. After we realized that we could get away with laying off people, not for making us more profitable, but just to make the stock price go up. Finally, they said, we could make more money if we make people pay for their health care. And worse or better still, we can make a lot more money if we shut down the pension plan and make it defined contribution, which is what they did. Now, again, a lot of what they gave us was stock, which later became worthless because they were involved in the, not worthless, but pretty much so, because they became involved in the great mortgage-backed scandal. But my point being that there's this dance, and the dance will exist forever, between corporate America and workers. And There's a sweet spot in the middle, but it seems like we never hit it. Look, to pay a little bit more for your health care made sense. To put your retirement plan at risk made sense for companies, but it screwed your average worker. But then on the other
Yeah.
hand, you have situations like this where we're giving away money in perpetuity without any balance. That's insane.
Yes, well, the city was very tough on the unions in 2010 when they put in this law, but that was under the former mayor, Adam Bradley. And they have continued, and we were told the city really needs to do this to prevent the future liabilities and that, to maintain solvency. But now apparently the city feels confident enough to restore it to currently retired firefighters who are otherwise eligible and were hired before July 1st, 1995, and retired before March 6, 2017.
Jesus.
And so those are the firefighters who were affected. But it also means that if you were hired after 1995, you were subject to this too on retirement. But that doesn't affect as many people. But on the other hand, I thought this was a truly intriguing reversal of policy.
Yeah, it sure is, and one that's going to cost the taxpayers of your city forever. Well, reasonably ever.
And nobody really has been told how much this will cost. However, I will say that $2,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah, it sure is.
Okay.
Well, does your city?
Retirees, retirees, sorry.
We're talking with
be.
John Bailey. He is our man
Yeah.
in White Plains. He is the managing editor and publisher of White Plains Citizen.net. He's also the host of a weekly TV show, White Plains Week. Is your city, did it ever get its arms around the practice of having people load up on overtime at the end of their careers so that the city is paying through the nose
No.
forever? They never got their arms around it.
we
New Rochelle did.
No, yeah. Well,
The reason
good
I
for
mention
New
it is that
Rochelle.
it's doable. Doable. And by the way, as a former executive, and that's why I toggle back and forth between what's fair to workers and what business has to do. That is criminal, and it's legal because of the way the laws are set up. But any police commissioner or police chief or lieutenant or captain that does that is, in the lighter sense of the word, because it's legal, they're crook, and they've got your hands for people that are supposed to be the purveyors of justice. They're
been
robbing
done
from you every day.
traditionally.
They're robbing from you every day.
This is traditional.
Yeah, they're
Yes,
traditionally
when our
robbing. They should get
former
fired.
Police chief,
They should get
when our
fired.
when our former police chief retired recently, he was immediately rehired for a needed position.
Well, if say need,
So, I mean,
fine,
we're
but he
still
shouldn't be
doing that.
giving away your money. He or she, if you're in that job, if I were a mayor or I were a city manager, and I realized there are unions, and I knew that a police chief was allowing that, I would fire his ass. Because that's something you pay managers to manage the budget, not just lock people up. It's as simple as that.
That isn't the way it works in White Plains.
No, I know. I got to run for office soon. It's coming to a theater near you. What else is going on in White Plains?
Well, the White Plains regarding the county is having a great sales tax year. It's up 10%.
Oh yeah, they're having a ball.
10%. Yeah, they really are, and everything is looking very good. However, even if the sales tax goes up a full 12% over what we finally take this year, it's not going to make enough money to do what they say it's going to do in their budget. They are really behind. I figure they're going to be in about $50 to $70 million deficit.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. I mean, that's no $15 million Astorino shortfall, okay?
No.
That is a
Although,
lot of money.
is it fair to say that
But, I mean, that's the way the stats work out.
one of the things we're learning
what-
is it fair to say that that Astorino appeared to have, and I like the man personally, but I got to go there. Other than kicking the can down the road, had no real plans for funding the county in the future. Was he going to let it just continue to shrink? And maybe that's a good thing, but do you think that that's where he was headed? Because one of the things we have learned, and we've even learned it from independent sources, I mean, we have the county executive on every week, and of course his job is to put the best light on.
But he still hasn't explained where he gets his projection.
Oh, his tax projection? We asked him
Yeah.
about that. He says he handed it over to people who know what they're doing, and that's what they tell him. We shall see. But no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the
Well,
older.
he doesn't tell you what they told him.
No, he does not. But I just want to back up.
That's
Do you
precisely
think?
my point.
Do you think that Astorino was just hoping to kick it down the road until he ran for some other office, or do you think he had some plan to fund things in the future? I mean, he had won all those years without union contracts. He had departments that were depleted, things like that. And he was ready to burn furniture.
Yes.
Now, for those who don't like taxes, and who knows, maybe doing away with the county government was a good idea for some. But do you think that's where he was headed, or do you think he was just hoping to move on before the bill came due?
He thought he got elected twice on I haven't raised your taxes. And he was following that formula. However, what people don't realize when the county government says, well, the unions have been without contracts for 7 years, that's really not true, because what they get is the automatic Taylor law continuance of their
Of the existing
previous
contract?
raise contract. That's right. That's what the Taylor law does. And so therefore is slightly misleading to say they've been without a contract. They still have the old contract, which continues in effect with all its steps, etc. Teachers, same way.
Where do you think he was headed? I'm just curious now that I've seen it the way Latham is governing.
Well, I
for good or
certainly
ill.
didn't feel like he wanted to go commuting to New York City. Do you?
No. John Bailey is our guest. He's our man in White Plains. You're listening to.
No, he's back doing sports.
He's
He's
also
sort of
doing
keeping a low
political
profile.
commentary on CNN too. He's become and this is not a criticism, as some
Is
might
it
interpret.
CNN or is it Fox?
No, he's CNN.
thought
He
it was
does, and it's actually good that CNN has people that back the president. It is a slight bit more balanced to what they do. And again, to know Bob is really to like him, believe me. And so, and this is something I'll eventually ask him. After these people leave the county executive office, I kind of give them time. Andy Spano has become a great political analyst. But if you recall, in fact, he'll be with us later this morning. When he first left office, he didn't make a lot of commentary about the government, which we now have him do regularly. So one never knows. But all right, what else is going on?
What else? Well, the building cleaners workers settled with the building cleaning contractors last Friday.
One of my
A
top
big
stories.
victory
Yeah.
for them. Yes, and I point out that they use the S word, the strike threat,
Well,
and the building cleaning contractors caved, and SEIU got all they wanted, but the reason was because the Teamsters said they would not cross the SEIU picket lines, which meant no deliveries to all those commercial and residential buildings.
yeah, well, do you mind a little pun during this holiday season?
Certainly not.
Okay. Well, the janitorial union cleaned up their latest contract. Come on, I thought that was pretty good. Come on.
Because they were smart.
Yeah.
Because
You
they
didn't get
were
the
smart.
pun, John? That went over your head?
Yes, I did. No, I got the pun.
Well, good. Then my favorite pun. Here's a good one. Since now that Christmas is over and Santa gets paid, where does he keep his money? Where does Santa Claus keep his money? Come on.
All right. I don't have any sparkling repartee to deliver on that one.
A snowbank.
Oh, man.
I love that one. I really do. Fine. Okay. Moving on.
It's not a bad joke, and it's clean.
It's a good joke. Well, yes. I'm working on ones that are a little saltier, John Bailey. What else do you want to tell us about White Plains? I love your list.
Well, New Year's celebration in White Plains, the ball drop in White Plains, which we drop a crystal ball down into the intersection of the Marrone and Maine, goes on at 10 a.m. on New Year's Eve on the 31st. And White Plains hopes you all come, rain or shine.
Rain or shine.
And,
now tell us what we'll get.
Yes. What we will get is you'll get music, you will get refreshments, the bars will be open, and it's a White Plains party every year. It's been going on since the Belfino administration, who launched it, much to everybody's snickers that we were just trying to duplicate it. But this is when White Plains was pretty moribund and did not have the activity. And so this ball drop has become a tradition. And it's very safe. However, what need to do is there are only a couple of entrances to the area, and you need to go on the City of White Plains website and check out the particulars. And Heineken has once again for their kiss, the 15th consecutive year, is going to provide rides home in case people celebrate a little too much. I think that's a great thing that the beer company does. They're based in White Plains, and they should be saluted for it. I mean, that is just a great thing. It saves lives, and it's good.
Anything else before we send you on your way? I'm looking forward to that great event there.
Right. Now, the other thing that is intriguing to me is the throughway proposed tolls.
Yes, that's a
residents
biggie.
a pass 2022 to 2023, and what bothers me about that is the commercial vehicles are getting destroyed on the tolls to give this very minor increase to Westchester Rockland residents, because the tolls that the commercial vehicles will pay will be sent back to you in prices on goods, which will be raised.
Wow, my goodness.
So you wind up paying for them.
Don't even start me with tolls. Because of holidays, I'm doing, you do a lot of travel, right? And so my Easy Pass charges went up. And those idiots that run Easy Pass, their computer, because of the short-term burst of travel, the computer went and debited my bank account for $500, said, "This is now your new run rate." Are you nuts? And they go and do that, and they mess up all your own personal accounting. And that's one of the problems, giving people the right to go into your bank account. They can ruin your whole day. Your whole day. Anyway, my friend.
Yes, when you replenish.
My
replenishment.
Yes, but they should get your approval before they do it. They should not have the right to come up with some arbitrary amount based on what a computer said because of 3 days usage. Really. All right,
well,
John.
This was sprung on us last week. They sprung it on you.
Yeah, of course they sprung it on you. They have ways.
Friday.
They have done something miraculous for government and ruinous to people. They now have ways to take your money without your permission. Think about it, my friend. Think about how draconian that is. So when I run for office,
they take it every day.
Every way they can.
Every penny spent on congressional members' salaries is wasted.
I got to go. So thank you very much, John Bailey, everybody. He is our man about town. And I was just about to take you, Jake. You should, unless it went to some other thing. Thank you very much. We need to take a look at the weather once again. You're listening to Radio Westchester. It's coming up on 8 o'clock, and I'm pretty sure we just connected with Jake. Jake, are you there? No, he's not there, but we will get Jake sooner or later, or he will call back. Let's take a look at the weather. Right now, it's 33 degrees across Westchester County. Going to get up to 42 or 44, something like that today. It will be a pleasant day. We'll have a pleasant evening getting down to about 33 tonight. No real freezing. Remember, though, the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care facilities. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. We're going to try and get our man again if my computer will only cooperate. All right, where is the little button? Where is the little button? It's not working. Well, we have these technical issues from time to time. It is how we roll. Hopefully he will call us back. Why? See, this is one of those things where you have the little bar on the bottom that doesn't want to do what you do. There we go. I can't see it. That's what it is. Let's see if we can't get Jake. This should be, there he is. Oh, Jake.
Hey.
There you are. Hold on one second, Jake. I just got to do one reset, and we'll be right with you. Folks, that's Jake Schaefer. He is one of the producers of the morning show here at the station, at the radio station, writes bits, but mostly he also is a sports guy who is our great handicapper. But just to reset right now, we're going to be talking with him about some of his picks of the week and a few other issues. And then we'll be talking with Andy Spano coming up after Andy Spano, Harlan Ullman. Now, Jake, Merry Christmas. How are you? Oh, Jake. He was right there. We had him on hold. Did he? There he is. He's calling us back. All right. Good morning, Jake. How are you?
Good morning. Happy holidays.
Happy holiday to you and yours. Sorry about that. I thought we had you on the line and we didn't, but such is radio. I want to start out first, Jake, with how did you do? We gave you some slack the other day because after all, you have holidays to celebrate as well, like the rest of us, and travel. By the way, if you used Easy Pass, be very careful because you know the way you travel during the holiday season a little more than usual? Well, be prepared for them to zap your Easy Pass account for a new calculation based on your holiday travel and not your regular travel. They pounded me.
Interesting.
They pounded me.
I will have to keep an eye out for that on the bill.
Well, I'm going to be calling some of our friends in the state government and see what we can do about getting them. I wonder if they get interest on that. I wonder if they get money on the balances that are in the Easy Pass account. I wonder if our wonderful
I'm
control.
sure it's some kind of a racket.
It is some kind of a racket, and it's gotten out of hand the way they can reach into our pockets. Why do you think they want the license plate readers and same thing? Do you know one of the beautiful things they have even right here in New Rochelle, where you have those new meters? Well, you can't just pull in next to the meter and take advantage of that. You got to start all over. They got our hands electronically in our pockets now. Electronically. Think about that.
That's why I like the relaxing confines of a greyhound.
You know, you're very right about the relaxing confines of a greyhound, but more importantly, our banks have to stop colluding, and I use that word, with the government. There should be a threshold. We have them at Merrill, or brokerage firms, where you can only take money out of somebody else's account to a certain threshold, not through some formula that you came up with the crooks that you work with. I'm really getting,
You are on your soapbox this morning.
No, they're going to turn me into a right-wing nut locally, not nationally yet, but locally they're going to turn me into a right-wing nut. They got no right to be reaching their hands in our pockets against our will. Anyway.
How much did they zap you for this holiday travel season?
Okay, you ready? You sitting down? My new replenishment amount, which used to be like at 100, okay, is now $500, but they took it out and you can't get it back. 2 times I've tried to get money back from them, right? And they say you'll get it back in 30 days. It never happened The people who pick up the phone react like a frog that's been pithed with a probe, where their brain has been wiped out.
Well, now I can understand why you're so fired up.
Oh no, but you know what it is? It's the larger issue. If I do news long enough, I mean, think about it. What they've slowly done. I like no more toll takers. It's more efficient. But you know what? Maybe you got to do a little correct. You can't just take money out of people's account at will, and the banks shouldn't allow it. And then you call the bank and you tell them to do away with, well, we got to call the authorities. You know, your mortgage companies suck. They want to take the money out before, you know, all of them. It's a racket, and we're all subject to it. Our freedom is being taken away.
Really.
Yeah, our freedom is being taken away by electronics, and enough is enough is enough. I tell you, I got to run for office. Maybe I can use this fire. And some of the people that have been getting elected, particularly locally, we elect mutes. We elect holograms, particularly here in New Rochelle, holograms. We have a new county legislator. We don't know what she's a nice woman, what she does or cares about, and we just elected a couple of people to be to the council who are virtual holograms. No one really has met them. They have no opinions. They don't come out to talk, but yet they will be part of a group.
Bob, it's up to you as a pillar of the community to hold these people's feet to the fire.
Yeah, no kidding. But
that's what the people are depending on from you.
Well, you know, maybe what they need are more rabble rousers in government instead of a one-party system. That's why the first person I called when I got this job, when I created this radio station, and I know it shakes people up because a lot of people don't like him, and why they don't like him is because he does what we're talking about, was Bob Cox. Now, Bob and I don't always agree. You hear us on our show, but Bob is willing to call out what he sees. And he was the first call. And I'm glad I did it. I'm glad he's a part of this radio station. Now I feel better that I did this, and I'll mail you a check. Now you have to answer for your picks. First, let's go.
Wow, I did fantastic.
Oh, well, let's go game. Let's go game by game.
All right, 3-1. For week 16, bringing up the total to 22-18-1 on the year. Just scraped by with the New England Patriots. I was giving 6.5. The Patriots ended up winning by 7, 24-17 over the Buffalo Bills.
All right, so go ahead.
So I'd like to.
So you won the Patriots game,
pick.
right? Go ahead.
Later that night, my only loss of the weekend was I was giving 6. I picked the 49ers against the Rams. The 49ers only won by 3, so that was the week's lone loss.
Now, there was one game. Which is the game you won by half a point? Was it the Jet game or the G won the game by half?
That was the Patriots-Bills game.
Yeah, by a half a point.
The Patriots won by 7. I had 6.5 to play with. I won by half a point.
You sweated it out. You must have been dancing around the house, weren't you? Weren't you? Come on, you could tell us.
That was a tough one. I didn't want to take the Patriots. I was rooting for the Bills, but I picked the Patriots, so I was a little torn during that game.
I guess.
I had Drew Brees and the Saints favored by 4 against Tennessee, and the Saints ended up winning by 10, 38-28. That was an easy pick. And then Monday night, I had Aaron Rodgers and the Packers were 5.5-point underdogs against the Vikings in Minnesota. The Packers ended up winning 23-10. That one was the lock of the week. That one was easy. So we move on to week 17 to end up the regular season. Again, you look at the slate this coming weekend, then you really have to figure out what teams are actually going to play their players, what teams have something to play for. So it's going to be hard to pick the games, but I will come up with a few picks for you tomorrow.
Oh, I can't wait for Jake's picks of the week tomorrow. I can't wait. Now, what's your record right now? Because I have some other sport items I want to ask you about. What's your record? Give us the record.
22-18-1.
So you're starting to become. See, this is better than
very impressive.
This is like a hedge fund. Well, let's just take it easy. You're sounding like one of our politicians now. Only 15 people were killed this year, whereas 16 died last year. It's a windfall of peace and happiness. 22 and 18. It's good, but it's not exactly. I don't think we should all start doing one another over this one. All right. There was a story in the paper today, and you're our guy. So I didn't understand it. There's some ball player that the Knicks are searching for, and we're wondering if you know anything about this guy. We've got to get it. Carl Anthony Towns. Who the heck? Who's he?
Very good player from the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Okay,
He's their star.
What are they
Big
going to do?
man.
Send in the Sopranos to kidnap him? What's their plan? How are they going to get him?
Well, I know he just signed a big contract, and I don't know. The Knicks would have to give up a lot to get him. I don't know what the kind of a deal they could package. And I know they like the kid from Duke that they just drafted, Barrett. I don't think they would consider trading him after a few months. But Towns is a great player. It would take a lot to get him. I have not read any reports on that. I've been traveling.
No, I know,
but
very
tropical Utica, New York.
But right here, this just came in the news. All right, I got another item that's in the news today, and I didn't see this. I don't know how. Out Christmas shopping, last minute stuff, traveling around. Dylan Betances is a Met now. When did this happen? How did I miss this?
I did not see that either.
Well, that's
Again,
what it says.
I kind of have had my head in the sands. I did not hear that at all.
We heard you had it somewhere else, but we're going to let you. Yeah, it says for the Mets, adding Betances is worth the potential reward as opposed to Diaz. He has shown he can handle New York pressure with their obsession for and pitching record contract. Well, you know what? It's a story written, and it's very unusual for a top. Joel Sherman's a good writer. And I'm going to say this about Joel Sherman. His article is obtuse. It appears to acknowledge that they signed him, but it doesn't say that they signed him, if you follow me.
Yes, I'm just looking at it right now. It says it could be a steal for the Mets, but he is hardly a sure thing.
Right, but it doesn't say that it's done.
He's got a long – I do not know if it's finalized. It seems like it's pretty close to be done, though.
Even if they were
he's coming off some serious injuries. He's got a lot of upside, but a lot of risk with Betances. Could be great and could blow his arm out in spring training and never be heard from again.
No, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, he just had a little shoulder problem. But then again, we don't know what they don't know. We don't know what they know. We don't know what the doctors have said. I did interview him.
I know he had Achilles problems.
Yeah, he did. I did interview him in person once, and he is huge. But it also reminded me.
6'8".
It also reminded me of how weird life is when you do this for a living. It was 4 years ago now, so he was much younger, and he's a young guy still. But he was so respectful. I was this old guy with gray hair, well, at least where he sat, and he was calling me sir and yes, sir, and no, sir. And it reminded you how when you grow up the way we did, idolizing sports figures, I'm looking up to him literally and figuratively, and he's treating me with all this respect. It was very nice. It was a very, very sweet young man.
That's a big guy.
He's a big guy. Well, it was also at that same sitting I had Dwight Gooden, who was very restless but funny. I've interviewed him a couple of times. One of my favorite things,
Dwight Gooden will be at the Westchester County Center's having a sports memorabilia show, and Dwight Gooden will be there.
When is this? Do you know?
So that is the 10th.
Oh,
I know Gooden's
good.
going to be there. Lawrence Taylor's going to be there. A lot of the
LT
80s Jets. Yeah, they've got a good lineup showing up at the Westchester Community Center.
And I must say, when you get him in person, the first time he was a little jittery. Second time he was great, very sober, very smart, by the way, really understood pitching. But I asked him to put his hand next to mine. His fingers must have been twice as long as mine, and I don't have tiny hands. No wonder he could throw the baseball the way he did.
Yeah, I had a chance to meet him once. He does have very large hands.
Yeah, I just he still had a great career. You ever look at his one-loss record? It's incredible. It's like it's like 2-1. A very interesting record does.
Yeah, if he had a couple more good years, he certainly would be in the Hall of Fame. But
no question about it. Now, there's a lot of chit chatter.
You would have figured.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What's that?
No, there's a lot of chit chatter now as we move towards the baseball Hall of Fame voting. Do you think Jeter, if he didn't play in New York, would get every single ballot?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you know he never won a batting title, never won an MVP, just a solid, great player for 20 years, though.
And the numbers show that he was not a spectacular shortstop. Every highlight play he made would have been a routine play for some of the more dynamic shortstops. But he got on ESPN with a limited range. He was a clutch player. Of course, he belongs in the Hall of Fame, but he shouldn't be 100% yes man.
Boy, you know, if you can make it in New York, you're just going to do really well. Now, you were too young. Did you remember Reggie Jackson used to say that if he played in New York, they'd have a candy bar named after him? You know, he did. I don't know if you're aware of that. The Reggie bar.
He won
there was
a couple World Series.
Yeah, and there was a candy bar. There was a Reggie. I don't know why they stopped.
He did have there was a Reggie Jackson bar. I did not know that.
Yeah, it wasn't Reggie Jackson. It was a Reggie bar. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it was out there for a while. But, hey, look at Babe Ruth or Baby Ruth's. Go figure. All righty. So do you have, before we send you on your way, do you have any tidbits for us tomorrow when you do your game of the week? I mean,
the game that I find the most interesting will be the Eagles-Giants game. The Eagles are playing for a playoff spot. They win, they're in. They lose, and the Cowboys win. The Cowboys are in. So what team will show up for the Giants? It's in New York. Eagles are 4.5-point favorites. Should be an interesting game. Don't have a pick yet for you, but I will tomorrow.
Okay. Let's go back to the Giants a little bit. Do you think that Daniel Jones has turned the corner? Certainly Barkley, who played well the game that Eli played. Barkley looked better than he had, but he looked absolutely great in last week's game, and so too did Daniel Jones. Do you think those two young men have turned the corner?
Well, Barkley has all the talent in the world, and he should have games like that numerous times a year. So obviously, I think he could be a superstar. I'm not sure. Jones, I'm not sure about him yet. He's still very young. Certainly looks like he could be a great player, but just have to let me watch him one more season before I'm ready to.
What is it about him that
next Montana,
even when he got drafted, what is it about him that people are questionable? Does he not have a great arm? I've read that, and how much does that make a difference in a game that's now becoming?
He doesn't.
Running's coming back.
He's got a decent arm. But the thing with him is turnovers. He puts the ball on the floor a lot, throws interceptions. That's his one Achilles heel. But his arm, he's got enough arm strength, and he is a very mobile quarterback. So,
okay,
it'll be interesting to see him next year.
Let's go across. Well, we can't even say across the river. Let's just go across to the other locker room. Mr. Darnold. Is he the real deal? And do you think he's going to take the Jets anywhere in the coming seasons?
I like him right now. I like him better than Jones.
So I think everybody does.
I think he could be a superstar quarterback as long as he, stays away from the hepatitis or whatever.
No, he had mononucleosis. A fair number of young people get that. Yeah, he'll move on from that. Does Gase stay with the team?
Gase is staying. I think they announced it weeks ago that he would be back next year. Whereas the Giants, I don't think the Giants will keep their coach.
I wonder why they're blaming him. This seems to me to be a GM issue of who they drafted and how they drafted. But you can't keep changing coaches every year, too. But I don't know.
What's your sense? And that definitely stunts a young quarterback's development.
What's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't like Schumer as a coach. He makes a lot of questionable decisions, in-game decisions. I think the Giants should move on from him, but they just need to find the right guy. Maybe it's McCarthy, the old Packers coach. If they think they have a guy, I would move on from Shermer.
You would go to McCarthy. Why is he even available? It's almost like, why is someone available? I realize there are different folks for different strokes and different coaches for different teams, but why is McCarthy even available?
That's a good question. I know he's already interviewed with the Carolina Panthers, and he will definitely be a head coach, I think, coming into next year. Will the Giants even have a chance to get him? Will he already be a head coach before the end of this year? That I'm not sure about.
All right. Well, I've got a couple of other things for you before I let you go. Now, Jake is a member of the Radio Westchester team. He also does some interesting stuff, some bit writing, which we've not done on Mornings with Bob Marrone for years. I used to do some bits, but he's added some really nice ones for us. Very involved with looking out for sponsors as well. But for 2020,
Yeah, I was combing over your listener mail. We'll have to get you some of those letters out.
yeah, there's plenty. That listener mail is interesting. By the way, I don't know if you heard it the other day, but we now have a listener in Amman, Jordan. We're in Jordan, California, the Netherlands, but Amman, Jordan kind of shocked me. But at any rate, New Year's. Now, to give a little more background on Jake as we talk more about our staff and add members, Jake was a stand-up comedian for 15 years and then did some other jobs as he transitions into radio. Do you have any 2020 resolutions? You one of those people that believes in resolutions? Do you do them?
Well, on the sports front, I'd like to continue my winning ways on the betting front. Try and do even better for you next year, Bob.
Well, what I was
22
wondering,
and 18-1 is fantastic, but we're going to try and do better next year.
well, what I think we ought to start doing too, and this is just for people who love, now that gambling's become such an important part of the sports, it always was, but now it's legally out there in public, and is doing one of those things where you set the odds before even the year starts. For example, let's just for fun, who do you think will be in the Super Bowl this year?
That is a good question.
So, I mean, that's my point. You
The
could set odds
playoffs
now
are gonna
next
be a
year in
lot of
July.
fun.
But who do you think is going to be there? Who do you think would be the final four?
This year?
then? Yeah, this year, right now. Coming up in 3 weeks, I guess it would be.
I'll take the Packers,
Wow.
Ravens, which would be a lot of fun.
Well, okay. I'm going to
Lamar
bring
Jackson
up.
and Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, I'm going to bring up. That would be great, but I'm going to bring up a couple of teams. What about Mr. Mahomes, and what about the monster up there in New England? Who knocks them out?
All very much in the mix, but it seems like it might be Baltimore's year. They're gonna rest all their players this week, and then they have the bye, so that's a nice 2-week vacation for Lamar Jackson. They're gonna be rested, ready to go. Certainly, the Patriots could beat anyone on any time, and Mahomes is fantastic. I would love to see Kansas City make the Super Bowl, but right now, I'm liking the Ravens and, maybe New Orleans, maybe Breeze. I love Aaron Rodgers. A lot of interesting teams. Seattle,
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers.
49ers can get healthy. But I'll go Green Bay and Baltimore at the
You're going
moment.
to go with Green Bay and Baltimore. I hope that Tom Brady isn't listening, but we're going to see if we can hold you to him. Writing some notes now. Green Bay.
I know Tom Brady is a fan, so he might be listening.
He just might be. You know what people forget? So many of these people live in New York in the off season, by the way. He's a New Yorker now, He lives in the city.
And I know Giselle is a big fan of you as well.
Giselle or Janelle?
Tom's.
Oh,
Tom's
Giselle. Well,
beautiful.
Giselle Bunchen and I, we had our moments together when she preferred physical pleasure over money. But those days are gone. And then I wake up.
Uh-huh.
Jake,
You broke her heart.
I broke her heart. Oh, gee, I wish. I don't know who well, you know what, though? Because I love pitching more than football, I'm always going to be a big fan of Verlander and his missus as well. They now have a child, so we still speak very well of them. Anyway, Jake Schaefer, everybody, will be getting his picks tomorrow. We'll see how well he does against the wheel. Jake Schaefer, thank you so very much. We look straight ahead. We do have Andy Spano coming on in just a couple of minutes, but I do have to do the weather again. We got to do these things. These are obligations. And the weather, let's see, it's 36 right now, getting up to 44, mostly cloudy, the temperature 43. That's the average for today. Tonight, mostly cloudy, a temperature of 39. The wind will be out of the east-southeast, 5 to 10 miles an hour. Now, tomorrow, mostly cloudy with a few light showers or sprinkles. The temperature will be 49 degrees. Saturday, a mix of sun and clouds. The high will be 49. A nice Saturday for you. You can get out, play a little touch football or whatever you like to do. On the weekends, take a walk in the park with your new sweater or your new basketball or whatever it is you got, new hockey stick. And Sunday, cloudy with rain though late in the day. The high will be 50 degrees. The overnight low will be 45. And of course, the weather is brought to you exclusively this morning by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. We're also supported this morning as we get into the bottom of the hour by Aging Issues Radio and Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. Now remember, as soon as we get the date for the grand opening, we will have 2 days of where you will have free. That's correct. Free. You can come in and get a free sample of virtual reality and what it's like right here at the station at the New Rochelle train station in the heart of New Rochelle. Andy Spano is coming up in just a moment, and we did confirm that he will be with us. Let me double check the time. He'll be calling in just a couple. We did have some news stories, though, that we did want to repeat for you, just briefly, at least the headlines. And the headlines today are, it's a light news day, as you would expect, given the holiday, which is why we've tried to keep it light. Again, Dylan Betances, if anyone knows if the Mets actually signed him, and Joel Sherman, there's a rule, by the way, in sports journalism that you make the story interesting and you do bury the lead on purpose. But the lead is so deep in this Joel, and he's a great writer, Joel Sherman story, that we can't figure out if the Mets actually signed him or not, because it's written in the past tense. So we don't know, but we just don't know. We do know that shopping centers are going to be crazy today. Why you would want to go out today, okay, and go to a shopping center after what you went through the day before Christmas, Christmas Eve, the day before that, for some of you Christmas morning, and get back to a store again is beyond me. But then again, it can be a money-making opportunity. I say take all the gifts back, turn it into cash, and make life easier, and stay away from the government, who found more ways now to take your money. I don't have a problem. We all have to pay taxes, but they're collecting our money. They do better than any mobster with a baseball bat. Think about that. What is happening to our government using technology to spy on us, to take our money? Enough. You know, this was the straw that broke the camel's back when they popped me for $500 this morning. Wow. Just think about that. Why? Because I cost the GWB? Really? Is that right? Okay. It's on now, government. Me and you and me, this radio station and you. You got to answer, as they say. And the Godfather, you got to answer for Santino. At least that's how I feel today. That's you guys are stuck with it. Speaking of law enforcement, the top story this morning: a Yonkers detective has pled guilty in a perjury case. This is a story that's been going on for a while. The Yonkers police detective, who's a member of Drug Enforcement Administration Task Force, is expected to plead guilty following a perjury investigation regarding the arrest of a Bronx man. And wow, Detective Sean Fogarty. His role in the case has actually forced him into retirement. Now, I don't think there's anyone listening to the sound of my voice that hasn't seen someone pouring something down a sewer. But I guess you're not supposed to do that if you have a business. A Mount Vernon chicken restaurant was accused of illegally dumping after video captured a worker pouring kitchen waste into a storm drain in front of the business. It's called Chicken Hut at Prospect Street and North 3rd Avenue. They face fines up to $11,000 after the City Department of Public Works last week issued a pair of summonses. The video was taken by an unidentified city resident. Wow. They don't usually see that kind of, don't they know that snitches get stitches or something like that? Not that I want the person to break the law, but wow, I wonder how many people are actually doing it. And as you heard John Bailey mention earlier, the janitors union, and I love the pun, they cleaned up with their new contract. They avoided a strike in the Lower Hudson Valley. A union bargaining committee for the 32BJ SEIU, representing more than 3,000 janitors in the region, reached a tentative contract agreement with an industry group negotiating for cleaning contractors and building owners. The union's contract ran through December 31st, and its janitors were prepared to go on strike after the deal expired that day. And this came as a surprise only because after talking to a number of politicos and trying to get some inside information, that while David Buchwald is the person who has worked for Nita Lowey, she's the 37th District Congresswoman, very powerful member of the Appropriations Committee in the United States Congress. She's going to retire after 30 years. And someone that interned in her office and who is a sitting assemblyman, David Buchwald, we've had him on the show, and a few other candidates. We'll have more. He has more or less been not the odds-on favorite, but the public favorite by many political operatives we talk to. However, through some contacts, we're beginning to learn that his star may be muting a little bit, maybe dulling just a little bit. But nonetheless, maybe he shouldn't give up his old seat, because the sixth candidate has now entered the race for the 93rd Assembly District seat that Mr. Buchwald will be vacating when he runs. Buchwald is now running for Representative Lowey's seats. And the person's name is Kristen Browd. I don't know if it's Browdy. I'm going to say Browd, Browdde. And maybe our next guest will know. But we're going to bring him on. Andy Spano will be with us in a moment. We'll be right with you, sir. But she's the first woman to declare, and she's a Chappaqua lawyer. She wants to fill the position vacated by Assemblyman Buchwald. Brown is an Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist. I guess I should have known, but I don't. Who says what separates her from her competitors is that she knows how to build coalitions. She says her run for office started with a conversation she had with her now 16-year-old son, which centered on what she says is a student's constant fear of becoming a school shooting victim. So that's the local news today on this Thursday, December 26th, 2019, as we head towards the end of the year. And this gives us an opportunity to thank our next guest. He's the former county executive, had the job for 12 years, has held many other positions, now does work for the state election board when he's not busy being a political analyst, which we appreciate. Please welcome Andy Spano. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure.
How are you, young man?
Yeah, I love it. Young man, first of all, you have
I want to make you feel good.
Well, it does, actually. I love being called a young man. And since you have, as do I, a mixed family, Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and any other holidays that you're celebrating, sir. My very best to you and yours.
And the same to you.
Thank you so much. Hey, I want to start out with, I was grumpy today, and I want to explain to you why I was grumpy, because it's one of the things that hit me. Do you know, obviously, around the holidays, you do travel, right? See, now you work for the state,
correct.
so you do a lot of travel, and because I have a lot of family in New Jersey, I have to cross the GWB, right? Okay, you have to do that. Sometimes a couple other bridges. Well, for the holiday season, that meant that my Easy Pass bill went up. Well, some crazy algorithmic computer took $500 out of my bank account this morning. That's what I woke up to. Did that put me in a foul mood to do the radio? And you call them up, Andy. You call them up. Well, okay, we'll send some back. A, they never do it. B, they say it'll be at least 30 days. Isn't it a little dangerous to give the government the right to go into your bank account? What was I thinking when I okayed this?
Yeah, listen, if you're going to live in this world, you got to get used to things like that. Take a deep breath and handle it systematically without getting angry.
Without getting angry? My mortgage payment is due in 2 days. Without getting angry? Now I got to redo the math.
Then you can get a little angry.
No, man, I'm going to have them.
Listen,
I'm going to have them call the governor. I'm going to have them call your boss. Then they're reading license plates. I'm going to put somebody else's license plate on my car. What? I'm sorry? That's what I'm going to do.
Not my boss.
No, I know, whatever. I'm going to put somebody else's
We're
license plate.
autonomous.
I'm going to hide my Easy Pass, and I'm going to steal, my brother's rich. I'm going to steal his license plate and put it on my car. I don't know who's reading my license plate. I don't know what bills. The day after Christmas.
I had this happened to me recently, okay?
Yeah.
for reasons I won't explain, I had to give the government some money back. Okay, because we were doing a transaction, and I had to give up a something I had as a right in order to do the other thing.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me over a week. I'm giving them money back.
Yes.
I dealt with the local government, the county government,
Mm-hmm.
and the state government,
Uh,
and everybody knows me.
well, yeah.
and they
Your picture's in every
politely
post office. Go ahead.
told- they said things to me like you got.
Yeah.
But in a nice way,
No.
not casually. I mean,
No,
they
no.
was like, well, geez, we're sorry, Mr. Spano, but, this is the rule. You got to fill out Form FS2. You got to go through here. You got to go through there. So give me a break.
I wake up to do the show. It's bad enough I got to read hours worth of news, and I look for texts, and the first thing I see is a text. You've had a successful replenishment. Then I check my email. Yeah, it was successful. All right. $500 based on current usage. What am I going to cross the
Well,
bridge?
maybe you got a trucker's algorithm.
That's what I got, a trucker's algorithm. You ain't kidding. I got a truck.
Yeah, 'cause
I got,
they pay $100. They pay $100
Yeah, I
every time
know.
they go over.
I got the space station's algorithm. Are you kidding? And that's how I started the day. People don't understand, and I go through that with the technology people who help me get set up. You can't do nasty things to me before I go on the air. I'm throwing wires around. I get the microphone. After Christmas spending, with the mortgage done in a week, they took $500 out of my bank account without asking me. Shouldn't there be a threshold? Like, because we have an agreement, take 100. I get it, but $500? It's actually making for good radio as I have a nervous breakdown right here the day after Christmas.
With all the benefits that come with technology, this is one of the real problems.
It really
And
is.
this is not only with the situation that you had, but with everything you do with computers. I mean,
yeah.
you run into this all the time.
Don't get me started.
And you just got to get used to it.
Oh no, well,
you
I
may
had.
not like it.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Andy. I'm calming down now. I'm going to drink more coffee.
Some say, so what? The next thing is, what causes this? It's not even incompetence.
Oh no, it's probably an
well,
algorithm
that'll
that just misinterpreted a couple of trips that I made. That's all I can figure out. But
Yeah, well, hopefully in the future they will figure out how to make these things better so that you don't have that occur.
so that I see, and even you think it's funny. You have to admit, and then you do it the day after Christmas when all our bank accounts are so low. They're in the Marianas Trench. It's just God Almighty. Andy Spano's our guest, and he's helping me get through. He's actually my psychiatrist.
That's what I feel like now. But the other thing, and the bottom line is, if you need any money, call me.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, all of a sudden, the number's going to be changed. Andy Spano's my guest. As you see, even with this, it's the holiday, and I'm trying to keep it as light as reasonably possible. And so far, we're doing okay. Now, what the heck did I want to? I have so many things I wanted to talk to you about. When I saw this thing hit, imagine waking up to it. Oh God, how am I going to pay my Christmas bills? Mortgage is due in 3 days. Then you get a ping on your phone. Ping!
Yesterday I had a political free day.
Yeah, I did too.
Decided that I wasn't going to think about it. I wasn't going to do anything about it. I wasn't going to talk about it. I wasn't going to do anything about it.
Well,
And
I
it
only
was like living in another world, so it was a pleasure.
well, it was, and I only did one political story this morning because the only thing I read about was the president was still, was yapping down in Mar-a-Lago, and I know that that's his way. But I was actually trying to be kind to the president, saying maybe if he just shut up, let the Republicans go through and try and rubber stamp this thing as quickly as they can and move on. He's not helping when he does that. And I got a couple of texts and emails.
No, he's not.
That say, that made it look like I wasn't dumping on him. I just wish he'd do that for his own good. But Where do you
No,
think
but
we're
this
headed
is
with
very
this?
dangerous, Bob. This is dangerous. This stuff. It you know from day one when we started discussing this, I don't know what 2 years ago or
Mhm.
whatever. I said, look, I disagree with this guy. I can't stand the way he talks, the way he, the stuff he doesn't know. Let's not even say they're lies, they're mistruths that maybe he's ignorant about, so on and so forth. But as long as he stays within the lines, everything is okay.
Yeah, people got to
But
accept
when
it.
you start when you start denigrating the system, of checks and balances, when you start denigrating the system of impeachment, and you try to, and he's infected McConnell now, to a point where McConnell says, I don't have to be fair. This is it. I'm just going to give a jerry-rigged jury here, and that'll be the end of it.
Oh,
I mean, that goes to the core of American democracy.
yes, it does. Although he did say, and correctly so, when he said, "Do you think Buttigieg? Do you think Elizabeth Warren?" And he named a bunch of other candidates. Do you think they have any interest in not being political when it comes to this? And he's right. So the question becomes, how do we, the public, how do our listeners, County Executive Spano, how do they separate what's political from what is appropriate to pursue from a legal point of view? It's very difficult.
No, this is not legal, and I'm not saying he doesn't have to be political. He could have whatever beliefs he has in his head, but the process he sets up has to be fair. I don't care if he's sitting there after it and to say anything. I don't care if at the end of it he says that. I mean, they come up with a decision that says, well, the facts are there, but these don't add up to impeachment. That's okay.
That or to removal from office. That is
that,
okay.
To say that you can't impeach, that's a whole different ballgame. The fact that you can say that the impeachment, there's something wrong with the impeachment, and therefore I don't have to conduct a fair trial. The fact that you can lift your hand and you can say, I swear I'm going to be impartial, and lie. Everyone knows it because you just said what you said on TV, a day ago, 2 days ago.
Now,
do those kinds of things and give that example to the American public and to individuals out there, that's a problem.
Now,
problem.
Interpret for us, if you will, the strategy of Pelosi withholding filing these charges. She's obviously looking to get some concessions. What do you think they are?
With a preface of, I have not talked to Nancy Pelosi, and she has not confided in me.
No.
As to what
she has
doing.
taste, this woman.
Okay. Yeah. Just looking at it, and there are a couple of scenarios here. One is this is the really esoteric one. There is a mechanism called cognitive dissonance.
I know what it is. Yeah.
And that plays out over a period of time. So if you allow things to move, come out, and so on and so forth, people who are mulling things over and not committed, are thinking about all these little things, and the Republicans are doing this, and he's tweeting that, and they come and say, I can't stand it, she's right, and then the thing goes over. The public action is very different. Now, that's a little esoteric, okay?
Yes.
The other thing is they hold this a little, and one of the court rules that all these guys that wouldn't testify have to testify.
Well, yeah,
they call them in.
Well, that's what I thought.
In the House of Representatives.
In the bowels of my reading. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Andy. Continue.
Yeah, and that changes the whole discourse.
Yeah, because in the bowels, after I got through throwing things around the house this morning over my 500, over my $500 charge, I saw this piece that I didn't get into early because it is Christmas time, but there were 27 requests for records from the White House, and they haven't sent any. Sooner or later, the Supreme Court's going to rule. That's going to blow up in the White House, isn't it?
Well, you're assuming that the Supreme Court's going to rule in favor of turning them over.
Well, why wouldn't they? Unless there's an executive privilege issue.
There's a third scenario. There's a third scenario to this, which is actually in play, and that's Schumer. who was talking to 4 votes to try to get them to move over on the structure of the trial. Now, you had Murkowski come out yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
I think she's pretty much there.
Yeah. Well,
So
by the
now
way,
it's
if I may,
equal to
for
3.
listeners, she's a senator from Alaska. She's a moderate Republican. Continue, sir. Sorry.
Yeah, because all you need is 51 votes in the Senate in order to approve the structure of the trial.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you call witnesses, what witnesses you call, who rules. 4 votes. It's not the 2/3 you need for conviction. And the other thing people have to realize is that conviction is not an exoneration.
Well, that's correct.
That the lack of conviction is not an
Right.
exoneration.
Well,
That
again,
just means you haven't been convicted.
well, one has to get into the very specifics. For example, the President Clinton was guilty of perjury, but the Senate didn't consider it grievous enough to be removed from office. So they are 2 separate things, and they may even have consequences later. For example, Clinton lost his license to do law for X numbers of years in Arkansas. Not that he wanted it anymore. So, yeah, but a lot of people have difficulty understanding that nuance, that impeachment is, at the end of the day, the political zeitgeist, along with the American people's will, to say that that's beyond the pale. But there is no hard and fast law that's beyond the pale. Theoretically, the president could shoot someone in Fifth Avenue.
You have something very different than you had in the other impeachment, in Clinton's impeachment and in the impeachment or the possible impeachment of Nixon. You have an entire support base that's spreading a different tune.
Well, yes, of course.
And people, that's the information people are getting. So it's very difficult. They're not going to move off that. So this is a very difficult time for the United States. Very difficult time, and we will see what happens.
Yes, indeed it is. We're talking with Andy Spano, former county executive, now political pundit here on Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. It is still 33 degrees. Actually, it's 36, pardon me, across Westchester. One of the things that we lay people who haven't been in the pits where you are, out in the arena, if you will. Now, last week, the Congress passed a joint bill to keep the budget going. They also passed another bill. Now, to wit, I say, when Nancy Pelosi and their offices are not far apart and Mitch McConnell see one another in the hallway, does she say to him, your mother wears combat boots? And does he say, Nancy, you look like you're 1,000 years old? Or are they cordial? What's it like in the halls of power?
I don't know.
Well, you've seen it at the state and county level.
Usually everyone was courteous. All right, and if you really dislike someone, you were courteous with your teeth clenched. But that's the way it used to be. Today, some of those comments could go. But remember, you've had in the past. You remember the famous incident where one congressman beat another congressman with a cane?
Yeah, the guy they named a tunnel after the Beat E. The guy that got beat, the Sumner Tunnel. A guy from South Carolina. They haven't changed much, have they? He beat him with a cane until he was whimpering. I mean, yeah, I know, but that happened leading up to the Civil.
On the floor.
Well, it was a different time, but again, they do have to work together. I mean, clearly, now if we go to the House, the minority leader and Nancy Pelosi had to get those 2 deals done that were done last week.
Well, well, it depends on who had to get the deals done. I mean, first of all, no one wanted to shut down the government again, so they had to come to some sort of agreement. Because both sides, the bottom line was we're not shutting down the government.
Right.
Okay. So they had that base. You have a situation where there is a mutually agreed to situation. So they had to give, and each one side had to give. But if one side does not have to give, as happens today in some issues, that's the end of it. I mean, McConnell's sitting there with maybe over 100 bills that have already been passed by the House of Representatives, and he's not moving.
Yeah, why is he doing that? I mean, aren't there some of these bills that were passed? Aren't some of them supported by Republicans as well? I mean, have we gotten to the point where he won't pass any bills because the president is telling? Are they doing to him what happened to Richard Thomas over in Mount Vernon? Just don't do anything so that the guy looks terrible. Man, no.
Some of the bills as they're passed require, if you don't want to pass them, if you don't want to clean the environment, if you don't want to get into all that kind of stuff that these bills relate to, and you don't want to talk about the issues publicly because you don't want your guys beat up in certain districts, you don't put them out there, so they have to talk about them.
Wow, that makes sense.
Period. That's it.
Just lovely. Speaking,
and that's it. There used to be very clear. Like, let's see, we need 4 votes. You need 4 votes of senators in order to get the 51. We can't have that, right?
Yeah.
So you go to the guy that maybe what's his name from Arizona, who looks like he's going to lose no matter what he does.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You go to him and you say to him, you know what? You vote with us. Don't vote against us. And
well, that's all fair. That's politics, and I don't mind when they say that's politics. One of my favorite guests is Jeannie Zaino, and where we sometimes get, I'm going to use a hockey phrase, get the sticks up. That's politics. But sometimes when someone slips over a rock and they do 87 stories and pretend that the rock was put there by someone in the FBI because they hated the person and they float, Jeannie will say to me, well, that's politics. No, because what you're saying in so many words is that politics is the skill of fooling the people and disinforming them because we don't trust the intelligence of the American people. Now, she balks at that, as do other political pundits. But at the end of the day, that's God's truth. If you can make people believe, if you can make people believe that Hillary Clinton was running a sex club out of Virginia, I got a stupid person for you.
That's politics. People who are outside of politics usually say that that's politics. The politics, at least how I experienced, I used to work in a government, as you know, when I first started, that was all Republican. I was the only Democrat.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, there were all kinds of ins and outs and everything, but we talked all the time, and no one in leadership in the Republican Party would ever do something that damaged the county.
Right.
They would pull all kinds of shenanigans, but they wouldn't go to something that would damage the county. County government and the way the people function, and they wouldn't do that. And today, I think they do that. They don't care.
Well, yeah, today there's a lot of scorched earth. Yeah, it really is.
That's right. Let's let it go down and we'll fix it later.
Hey, want to have fun over another issue? Because these are the kinds of issues that confuse people. When I say confused, because I'm going to use the word blended. And I want to go back to Mount Vernon. Because first, just to show that I'm not just some blind defender of this ex-mayor, he got convicted. Okay, he got convicted. He pled guilty. He lost his job. He got found money because they were paying bills and very openly, it was no secret, out of the water department because they claimed that the controller wasn't paying them otherwise. But then his lawyer went and, since they're paying bills there, we'll also pay your legal bills. And he's paying for it. So all that's true. It happened. The mayor's gone. However, this is a story within a story. This guy ran on finding out who put 36 tons of dirt in Memorial Field so we can get it fixed. He ran on it. He fought and died over it. He really did, among other things. Say anything else about him that you want. So, with 2 months left in an acting mayor's term, finally they removed the dirt, and that guy spikes the ball. If I'm Richard Thomas, I need medication after that. You fought and died on the parapet trying to find out what corruption led to this. That is politics, and it is a cruel part of it. I don't, it's like had the Republicans actually repealed and replaced Obamacare, I would still give Obama credit because he championed doing something about health care. But all of a sudden now, Richard's got an X on him, and everything he did was as the devil's servant. That is the way it is, isn't it?
You know, the power is an interesting, element here. When you're in politics, and goes anywhere. You could be in the politics of a TV station, like at Fox
Oh yeah, I
News
was good
with
at politics,
other
corporate
elves.
politics. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right, or at colleges where that's probably the worst politics I've ever seen. Everyone's vying to be chairman of the department, or get over you, or get his book published, or whatever the hell that is. I mean that. That's probably some of the worst, because you don't expect it initially. So it's there, and it exists. And if you walk in like some innocent, you get clobbered. Everybody who runs for the first time, everyone who runs for the first time, and it's great to watch it. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. And you get in, and you find out it ain't that easy, even if it's the good thing to do. And if you start that way, and you start like the mayor started,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe he had good intentions when he started. He got some bad advice from some people around him.
Yes, he did.
You get clobbered because you're not watching the edges,
Mm-hmm.
and you get destroyed.
I don't know why anyone would want to do it. Yeah. Anyway,
Well, because there are some people who know how to maneuver through that and not get destroyed. And that's the way you do it. So when people say to you, well, that's politics, no, you got to get it. There are some things that's politics, but in politics, if you're sincere about what you want to do, you got to take all these factors that I'm talking about and figure out how you're going to get through them to do what you want to do.
well, and
period.
that's why the press needs to be very careful about nuance and what I call blending. For example, they did this story last week. One of the big outlets did, and they did it badly, I thought, and it was an outlet I greatly respect. Andre Wallace, the current acting mayor, says we're suing to get our money back that came out of the water department, and the paper referred to it as stealing. Now, unless you were on Pluto, the fact that there was a rift between the mayor and the controller, rightly or wrongly, and that he was openly paying bills out of the water department because she wouldn't approve them for, well, ostensibly legitimate things, to call it stealing before there's any kind of a hearing or a trial, to me, was irresponsible without putting quotes on it. And so the press doesn't help.
Yeah, but it never helped. I mean, we all the Democrats take sides now, protecting the press and everything else like that. I'm telling you, I had no love for the press per se. When I was in office, they never got anything right. They had reporters who always looked to the negative stuff and got you and the mess. That kind of stuff.
Well, I'll give you an example, and it has to go nameless.
They're right to do that. They're right to do that. They're right to exist. The fact that they've tried to get it, the editorials tried to get it right, or this tried to get it right, and so on and so forth. I knew that, but this has been from time immemorial.
Yeah, it really
is.
And
without the press, our democracy would be gone.
I know we got to live with it all. Like I knew, and I'll never reveal it because it's a professional courtesy, but I knew a couple of very important reporters in this county that always thought the worst if Richard Thomas sneezed. And I always felt very uncomfortable about it because I said, how can they be objective when they've already come to these conclusions? So it is what it is. But and who knows, I may be, because of my own sense of right and wrong, defending him too much, only on those issues. I mean, I'm one of the people that said to his face, Spezio, really? And that would caution him to make more allies. But it's very hard to be objective about this stuff. Very difficult. Anyway,
I tell you something. You take Trump. If Trump's interesting, had he wanted to do like the border wall, right? He definitely had an issue. The issue is there's something wrong with the border. So, but instead of talking about the border wall as a physical wall, and taking the advice about protecting the border and securing the border, He could have made it. He could have had enough votes between Democrats and Republicans in order to get that done.
Well, yeah, I
And
give
he could have done that and said, and got the people on his side by saying, I'm doing this. I'm fixing this swamp. And by the way, you don't drain a swamp. It's a very bad idea.
why is that?
To drain a real swamp. It's a bad expression. You drain swamps, you cause problems.
What do you do with the swamp?
You leave it alone because it's a wetland and it preserves the area around it and protects it.
We are talking with Chief Agriculturalist Andy Spano. I'm just having fun. Andy, what I love about talking to you is you keep me sane. You've been through these wars yourself. I have to tell you, I appreciate your appearances a great deal. And it really is a pleasure. We'll talk again after the new year, but I wish you a happy and healthy new year. And you can't know how much I appreciate you. Thank you so very, very much.
Well, let me tell you something. If I were in office now, I would never talk like this to you.
Oh, I know that. That's why I was explaining to the listeners before. You waited a couple of years before you started talking politically like this. But it has been fun and refreshing.
You can't talk like this.
No, you can't. And then the things we both laugh at, we're probably both going to hell. But it is. Thank you so very much, and my best to you and yours. And enjoy the rest of Hanukkah and New Year's. Thank you so much, sir. Andy Spano, everyone, and you gotta love it. We're going to get Harlan Ullman on the line in a minute after we do a little bit of catching up, and that we will do right now. It's weather time. It's also 9:04. That means in 1 minute, we better get a hold of our next guest, Harlan Ullman, talk a little bit of politics as we get into the new year, see what he feels we can expect from a security point of view. It is 36 degrees. It's getting warmer. It's going to get up to the mid-40s today, something that we will take. We will enjoy that tonight, getting down to the high 30s. Tomorrow, more of the same. Some clouds, getting up to about 49. That is Friday, and the wind will be out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Saturday, a mix of sun and clouds, the high 49. Sunday will give us a bit of a problem, cloudy with rain late in the day. The high will be 50 degrees. And of course, today, the weather alone, is supported by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the very finest facility that has been one of the finer facilities that has been voted in our area for senior care. Go to uhgc.com, and also they are supporters of the top of the hour. And it is also brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Again, visit uhgc.com. Voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. Also by Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne and Kahn. Plug in virtual reality and Dominic's Fine Cigars. Now remember, Dominic's Fine Cigars and how we roll with them is they are open 7 days a week, and that's a good deal. Now, my eyes are not working well for me today. Do any of you wear contact lenses? I have an issue to bring up, and that is this. Ken, I started wearing these dailies as opposed to weeklies, right? Now, I only use them for hockey or occasionally for the show if I break my glasses. But what I find with the dailies, they are so flimsy that for every 2 you put in, you waste one. You wind up throwing it out. That's for every 2. And that's number one. Number two, sometimes they become loose in your eye. Sometimes they hurt your eyes. So I'm going back to my weeklies, but maybe it's just me. And then trying to put them in, it's like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. At least that's my take. So, all right, we're about to get our next guest through this wonderful system that I have. Let's see if he will be on the line. Yep, it's ringing. We hope that he will pick up. And that, of course, would be Harlan Ullman. Now, Harlan Ullman, as you know, he is an author. He's a columnist for UPI, one of not just this country's, but the planet's premier national security experts. He's been the chief civilian advisor to the Atlantic Council. He is the chair of his own firm. He sits on many boards. He's advised prime ministers, foreign ministers, secretaries of state, generals, and his two books, which we've talked about a lot on this program, A Handful of Bullets, and more recently, Anatomy of Failure, How America Loses the War as It Starts. Please join me in wishing him the day after Christmas a Merry Christmas, and since it's the fourth day of Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah as well. Good morning, Harlan Ullman.
Happy Christmas.
Yes, thank you so very much, sir. And we're never sure what religion people follow, and we make sure to cover both of the major Judeo-Christian religions here. So my best to you and your family. And as we head into the new year, you know how much I appreciate it. I've said it off air and in emails, but you're just such a joy to have on the show in terms of educating us and helping us understand what's going on in the world. So I'd like to tee
You're
up.
very kind.
Well, no, you've already proven it over the years you've been with us. Let's start at the top, only because it's in the top of the news, and then maybe we can take a look at the year ahead. Right now, there's a bit of a stalemate, and again, we probably won't see anything till after the holiday. Nancy Pelosi is not yet going forward with the official charges to the Senate, and the Senate is saying there's nothing to see here, and ahead of the game saying we just want to rubber stamp this and move on, which we understand politically. Where do you think they're going, and where do you think we'll go? Now, we know you're not on the law end of the business, so to speak, but where do you think we're going with the 27 requests for documents from the White House that have not yet been forwarded to the Senate committee, whereas during Watergate, such documents were provided?
Well, in my piece I put in the Financial Times of London, this is really the very, very beginning. No matter what happens with the trial, I think that the biggest events are going to be forthcoming in 2020. The Supreme Court in March will rule whether or not the president's tax returns and business records can be made public, or at least released.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to be a hugely important decision because if the court votes 5-4, it will mean the court has been politicized, especially if it votes not to release the records. And that will be the end of the independence of three branches of government, which I think could be potentially catastrophic. But if the records are in fact released, irrespective of what happens in the Senate, whether there is a trial, whether there's not a trial, whether the president is acquitted, which looks almost certain, I think the president stands a good chance of being impeached again. Just because impeachment didn't work the first time doesn't mean it couldn't work a second or a third time.
Yeah, there's no double jeopardy in
records,
impeachment. Yeah, I know. Go ahead. I'm
precisely.
sorry.
And so as records come out, for example, it's very interesting that OMB sent an email to the Department of Defense saying 90 minutes after the conversation on July 25th with President Zelensky, hold up the aid for Ukraine.
Yep.
Now, it's conceivable that that is just because the bureaucracy was working on this. It happened to be an ill-fated coincidence. On the other hand, perhaps it wasn't a coincidence. So there are all sorts of other things that could come out. And I think what we're seeing right now is just not even the first moves of a major chess game. No, chess is a bad example between Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader McConnell. But this has a long way to go. And even if there is a trial, I think it's just the beginning of the end and not the end of the beginning.
The beginning of the end of what, though? What do you think happens in the end of this? Not that you have a crystal ball. But...
Well, what happened? Well, I think several things happen. One, I think that the president could be impeached and convicted ultimately. I think he could be indicted on all sorts of charges. He also could win re-election in 2020. I think that any of these events will have huge implications for America's democracy. I think this is really one of the most serious times, and I don't want to sound like overstatement, possibly since the Civil War in terms of the future of the Republic. But this is a point where truth and fact no longer exist. I mean, this country has to realize if truth and fact are important, then we have to rely on them. But where you stand is where you sit, and you alter the facts accordingly to reflect your position, irrespective of their veracity. And this is a terribly difficult time when there's no basis then for judgment except ideology, except for ignorance, except for biases. And as I said, this is a very, very, very troubling time, and people should be worried simply because the truth no longer counts or appears no longer to count.
Well, it doesn't, and it's just troubling all the way around. I'm afraid. Let's look at the world stage, if we may, and look towards 2020. Afghanistan's been in the news again. The president he was withdrawing troops, but yet we still have troops there. He withdrew troops from Syria only to send some back. Let's start with Afghanistan and then go on to Syria, what's going on with the Kurds, what's going on with Turkey, and in the background, Russia someplace.
First thing to realize is that Trump's America First means that he wants to retrench America's position overseas. And while in some ways that is a valid perspective, it has to be done with sophistication and some sense of strategic foresight, because you don't want to collapse the international environment simply to rush to bring troops home. In Afghanistan, as in Vietnam, Trump has only bad choices.
Yeah,
if
just
we
in a
stay,
tough
it's
spot.
going to be expensive. So whatever one's view of Trump is, Afghanistan is a loser no matter how you come out. Abraham Lincoln, Dwight Eisenhower could not solve Afghanistan. And so I think the way that this will end up is that we'll have some small residual force in Afghanistan for a considerable amount of time. I don't know whether the negotiations with the Taliban are going to really lead to anything of significance. Ashraf Ghani was just reelected with 50.45% of the vote, which means that the election was probably staged. So the legitimacy of the Ghani regime is going to be somewhat in question. Certainly, whether it is valid or not, the Taliban will make it so. And in conclusion, Afghanistan is a mess no matter what we do, and I suspect we'll have longer-term presence there. Syria, will read the headlines today that nearly 100,000 Syrian Kurds have been displaced as the Syrian forces, supported by the Russians, have moved into the province. Syria is a mess. It will continue to be a humanitarian crisis, and there's very little we can do about
Just
it.
an insert here. Didn't we read, though, that the Kurds cut a deal with the Syrians, or the Syrians just not able
That
to
doesn't
live
mean
up to it?
anything. Nobody believes anything. Yes, the Kurds did try to cut a deal, but the Kurds are playing from a very, very weak hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so Syria will continue to be a festering sore. As far as the future of Turkey, I think that the cost of expelling Turkey from NATO, and by the way, the Washington Treaty that created NATO has no grounds for expelling a member, so that would have to be negotiated. I think NATO is just going to have to put up with whatever Turkey and Erdogan want to do for the foreseeable future and have to bite on the bullet.
Mm-hmm.
The really larger issues here are less the beating back of democracy in the West and more a question about how the United States and Britain manage their affairs. Britain with Brexit, Boris Johnson is now anxious to move out of the European Union. I don't think legally and in terms of procedurally, administratively, he's going to be able to do that as easily as he thinks. And so my guess is that Britain is probably headed towards an economic downturn. And I think there's still grave issues whether or not it can, in fact, leave the EU as it hopes to do so. In America, the 2020 elections will dominate everything. One of the things that concerns me most, Bob, is that while the Trump administration, any administration, will rightly trump the fact that the economy is going so well,
Mm-hmm.
I have an entirely different view on this. I don't think the economy is going as well as people think. Clearly, the stock market is, businesses are doing well. But look, if you had $1 trillion added to the economy every year and low interest rates, I would expect the economy to increasing its GDP by 3, 4, 5,
Mhm.
maybe 6%. It's only moving by 2%. Now, what happens when we don't throw in $1 trillion in cash every year because we can't control our budgets and interest rates go up?
Mm-hmm.
At some stage,
It's catastrophic.
economic gravity has
Yes.
got to apply. And so whereas the administration for the moment can say the economy is really doing well, unemployment is low, it's low for all sorts of minorities, et cetera, wages are going up. In a sense, that's partially true. But as I point out, it's rather like somebody who just jumped off the Empire State Building and while cruising past floor 77 was asked, how's it going? He said, so far, so good.
Yeah.
So this notion that the economy is really going gangbusters. If it really were going gangbusters, it would be increasing by 4 or 5% a year. It's not, and that should be very, very worrisome. And then there'll be some kind of an event that's unpredictable. Who knows whether it will be China doing something stupid, Russia doing something stupid. Who knows? So I think that 2020 is a year that does not start out particularly well because of all the factors that are in place. And with the election and the need for the Democrats to come up with a serious candidate, whether they can do that or not, whether Mike Bloomberg, who you and I both respect and probably would vote for, or whether he can make a dent, which I think is unlikely, still needs to be the same. And so the uncertainties here are really huge. And unfortunately, the impeachment trial, which I assume will take place sometime in January, as I said, is only the very beginning of the end. And so it's going to be a very, very rough year, as bad as 2019 was in some ways. The uncertainties of 2020 are ones that I think people should worry about.
Hallelujah. For another year like this one. My guest, of course, Harlan Ullman. You know, the great thing about good answers is when an answer is good, it raises more questions. So I took some notes here, and I'm going to go to the top of some of the things you've mentioned. And this is a question I ask with a great deal of gravity and sacredness. Will we be able, on either side of this, forget one's politics, will the Supreme Court, do the members, do you think, do they realize at this particular juncture in American history that they need to be apolitical to help preserve this republic? Do you think that we can hope for that, of course. Do you think that we can expect it?
The problem here is that one's view of being apolitical varies from individual to individual. And so I think that the Supreme Court will probably think it's doing the right thing. The swing vote here, I think, is going to be John Roberts, the Chief Justice.
But should there even be a swing vote among these people? You know, it's the only endeavor. I'm always shocked when we do these interviews and we do the vetting of Supreme Court justices. It's one of the few times where we ask for a verdict before the trial. It is incomprehensible to me as a citizen that we do that.
I think some of the views of some of the members are so hard over, both left and right, that no doubt the members of the Supreme Court will think that they're doing the right thing. But this is not 1974. This is not the court that voted 9-0 to make Nixon turn over his tax records. There are going to be some on the court who believe in the unity of the executive, the unity of executive privilege, and that will be the trump card that they will play. And so do I think that I would be cynical enough to think that the court's going to be hugely political in how it initially views things? No, I don't think that's the case. But I don't think that makes any difference because I think that the result is likely to be 5-4. We will just see how that turns out.
Well, okay. I hope not. And that's either side. I mean, either side. I just wish, I hope
absolutely.
They look at the facts, you know?
Absolutely.
Okay. One of the things.
There's nobody, Bob, look, my column that came out today, which was meant to come out on Christmas Day,
yes,
is Dickens' Ghost of Christmas Past.
Yeah, I loved it.
Future visit Donald Trump, and the Ghost of Christmas Past was Abraham Lincoln, and Lincoln says to Trump, "What have you done to my party?" The fact of the matter is, Republicans of today, Trump's party, are not Republicans of the past, and this also applies to, I think, members of the Supreme Court. Democrats of today are far, far more left. The so-called blue dog Democrats that favored a strong national security policy abroad and domestic progressivism has now been lost. And so I'm afraid that the nature of ideology has really consumed parties, making the Republican Party no longer the Republican Party and driving the Democratic Party far left. And I think that's probably going to be reflected in the nature of the Supreme Court decision. But as you said, we can hope we're going to be wrong.
Well, one can hope. Let's move on to the second thing. Now, you're so intimately involved with these dynamics that this question may surprise you. But one of my jobs is to look at these things as your basic listener, like me would. We have,
of course.
But here's the root of my question. It has to do with the Taliban. There's ISIS, or there was, or there still is remnants, of course. In fact, very powerful remnants.
Believe me.
There's Al Qaeda. Okay. The
Right.
Taliban, we for a while, right after 9/11, we used to lump them in when we saw the books with Al Qaeda. What makes them unique? Are they only an organization that grew up and is insistent on running Afghanistan? What is their lineage?
Uh, the Taliban basically reflect the Punjab sect in formerly India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. That goes back several thousands of years. And they have been dominated by their cultural ideology called Pashtunwala, which is based on three things. One, hospitality, friendship, and revenge. And by hospitality, you have examples of Taliban taking in wounded American soldiers, and when they have been approached by other Taliban who want to kill or capture the Americans, they refuse to do so. And so this ideology exists throughout much of the Punjab sect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a driving factor going back to the time of Alexander the Great. And so, yes, these people are Muslim. Yes, some of the Taliban are more extreme in terms of their Muslim. But the Taliban don't practice away games. They're much more concerned with controlling their various tribes and regions. And they're not interested necessarily in foreign policy. I think the exception is selling poppies and opium because that's how they make most
They
of their
fund,
income.
yeah, sure.
And so you can't just say the Taliban, you can't say the Taliban are like ISIS or Al Qaeda, even though they may practice terrorism. They do it on a local level. And so there's a huge distinction, something that we never really understood.
Well, the reason I bring that up, since they are of Afghanistan, and I don't know if they're a majority, a quorum, what they are in terms of numbers.
They're a significant minority.
Because the reason I say it is, if they can rule the country, because you know what I've given up on a little bit.
Yes. Yes.
You probably do. Is they okay? When they, I guess it was 20 years ago, when they started destroying all kinds of artifacts and history.
All the Buddhist strikes and preventing kite flying and all sorts of other radical things.
Yeah, that really troubled me. But now I'm saying, but if they can run the country effectively, why not just let them? That was my question.
Well, the issue here is that we believe in universal human rights, and that includes the rights of women for education, so forth. The Taliban have an entirely different view. And we find it hugely offensive that the Taliban could do things as they did when they took over in the 1990s, destroying all sorts of shrines, killing people, et cetera, et cetera. We view that as objectionable. Now, if we want to hold our noses and just say they can do whatever they want inside their country, that's fine. But America hasn't been able to do that, certainly since World War I. And so there's a conflict between what we see as universal human rights and the conduct of the Taliban in control. And that's not easily reconcilable. So that gives us reasons why we want to intervene if we have to. But it's also a situation in which intervention is not going to work. So that's a terrible dilemma that we face.
Well, no, it really is. But when we do negotiate them, what is even a reasonable approach? You know what I'd want to say to them? I mean, because Trump did want to, and he doesn't get any credit for this, wants to negotiate with the Taliban. If he does, maybe he can just look. If people want to leave, let them leave. But then go to hell and do what the hell you want. That seems to be reasonable. And I'm just going to mention one other thing as food for thought before you answer that. I'm one of the few people who thought we were better off with Saddam Hussein running Iraq than what happened afterwards.
You weren't one of the very few. I mean, you take a look at it. Supposing Saddam was still in charge of Iraq, the Middle East would not be in the mess it is.
Well, that's
right
what I'm
now.
saying. Yeah. So, but
of course,
but
and you'd
why-
have a counterbalance. You'd have a counterbalance to Iran. I mean, the strategic the strategic fallout from the invasion of Iraq in 2003 has been catastrophic, far worse than the intervention to Vietnam. It's been the greatest American tragedy and strategic mistake since the Civil War.
Absolutely.
Period.
Okay, so that's the
For which
Taliban.
George W. Bush, by the way, George W. Bush is not held accountable.
Well, only because
And
I
in
think
fact was given a second term.
the current administration sucks all the air out of the room. But yeah, what's interesting, a very nice man, but not a very good president, George W. So that's the Taliban. What do you think happens there realistically? Do we just continue in this endless stalemate, or since the president wants to get out
I
of these
think
countries, maybe we let the Taliban
I
do what
think
they
we'll
want to
keep
do?
a small. No, I think what'll happen is we'll keep a small residual force there for counterterrorism operations, prop up the degree we can the government in Kabul and several of the provinces, and basically the Taliban will be in control of a significant amount of Afghanistan in some of the provinces, and there'll be an uneasy truce between Kabul and the Afghan government and a majority of the Afghan people, by the way, and the Taliban, who will have regional or local hegemony over villages and small parts of provinces, I would guess.
Okay, well, let's move on. Again, my guest is Harlan Ullman, internationally renowned national security expert, teaches at war colleges, does so many different things. While we're in the Middle East, we see some dust-ups, some one greater than others, one in Iraq, while we're talking about Iraq, and then there's some unrest now of all places in Lebanon. Let's start with Iraq.
Well, the trouble with Iraq is the government cannot deliver. Corruption is rampant. And so you have huge number of Iraqis who are protesting for very simple and good reasons that their lives have not been made better. Economically, life is very difficult. Unemployment is at a huge percentage of the population. And people want jobs, they want dignity, and they want respect. These are universal principles, universal qualities. That's the issue in Iraq, and the government can't sort it out. And so my guess is that while Iraq may not be on the verge of a civil war, this unrest, as in Hong Kong, is going to continue for a considerable amount of time. Lebanon is a 20-year civil war. The problem with Lebanon is a combination of corruption and the fact that the only competent and trustworthy branch of government is the army. And I'm not sure the army is strong enough and doesn't want to have a military takeover. So I think politically, Lebanon is going to be in some degree of political chaos. The strongest political party, of course, is Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is opposed to most of our Western values. And so I think Hezbollah will gain the upper hand to some degree. But right now, Lebanon is largely ungovernable. There are many reasons for it. Historically, their constitution has a government that's divided in so many ways to make it very difficult to govern. And they need to find a prime minister who's not corrupt, which is going to be exceedingly difficult.
Yeah, they still can't agree on that.
For some time, for some time now, they can't either do that in Iraq.
But
and so far, for some time to come, the situation in Lebanon is going to be chaotic, and one hopes it doesn't get out of hand. And don't forget, the Israelis are watching this with eagle eye.
Yeah, we're going there next.
The last thing they want to see. The last thing they want to see is an unstable Lebanon. Remember, they went in 1982 when they learned their lesson because they got whipped. But having somebody on the border, which is in a chaotic state, is not necessarily good for stability. So one does not see the immediate outcome of this as very, very positive.
Well, one of the things about Lebanon that always surprises me, and unless I have it right, let's take at least the city of Beirut is probably or among the most westernized cities in the Middle East. So how does that city deal with all of this when it has commerce, it has tourism?
It doesn't. It makes life exceedingly difficult because you still have extreme movements from radical Muslim elements. You have Hezbollah, you have the Muslim Brotherhood, and you've got all these different elements there without anybody who's got the authority and legitimacy to rule in a sensible way. And how you unscramble those eggs is something that is not going to happen very easily.
All we can ever do is hope for the perpetual stalemate that keeps that place relatively stable, I guess.
I mean, I wish, you'll ask me, well, what are you optimistic?
Well, we're not there yet.
Say that
we're not there yet.
I would say that.
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, because I got a couple more. You answered so many good questions before. I want to just put under the microscope just a little bit Israel. Netanyahu is in even deeper trouble than we first thought. They talk about indicting him now and trying him, but yet they still haven't formed a government. What is the future of Israel with respect to having a government finally formed? B, And they're in a tough spot because they do have to keep their people secure, but also they're increasing. They have an increasing. What's the right word? I won't say that it's an insurgency, but they have people who don't like that they're headed towards a one-state solution. Where are they headed, Israel in general?
Until they get a prime minister other than Netanyahu, Israel is locked into political stalemate. The next elections will not be until March. There's no guarantee that Benny Gantz is going to win or anybody's going to emerge. There has been within the Likud party some disruption, people challenging Netanyahu's leadership. And Netanyahu is anti two-state solution, no matter what he says. And until Netanyahu is forced out of power one way or the other, the situation is going to continue to be stalemate, whether the Israelis are going to be able to elect a government. There is a government, by the way, even though it's in deadlock, but there is no agreement on a prime minister. So the first thing they've got to do is decide whether or not they want a real prime minister. And once they do that, then I think Israel will become more stable. But in the interim, obviously with a prime minister who has he been indicted? Yes, he's been indicted. He hasn't been tried yet. Who knows? So you've got political uncertainty in a region of the world where uncertainty reigns.
Mm-hmm.
And so that leads to future issues about what happens next. We only can hope, and hope is not a strategy, that between now and March nothing comes unwound. And it's up to the Israelis to elect a government in which they have some credibility and some faith. And the two-state solution is the only solution that I think is going to work. Otherwise, you're going to end up with Israel with a majority Arab society and population, which makes it impossible for the Jewish community really to rule. So it's headed for a train wreck. I think some people realize it's a train wreck, but switching tracks seems to be impossible for the time being.
Oh, a lot of fun there. Well, there's this interesting dynamic that I read a lot about. Don't have my arms around it yet. Between the Jewish diaspora, particularly here in the United States, and Israel itself, and even the executive order that the president signed, which means to equate criticism of Israel. I mean, some of it in college campuses is extreme and ridiculous because some of the kids
it's really focused on colleges. It focuses only on college.
Yeah, but to liken anti criticism of Israel to anti-Semitism is a slippery slope. And if you're in Israel, do you like that?
It's absurd. It's absurd. It's absurd and it's dangerous. Well, the right wing does, obviously, but it's an absurd view. And to claim that Judaism, it's now a sect or an ethnicity rather than a religion. We've had this discussion before.
Yes.
Ivanka Trump is not Jewish by birth. She comes from a Christian family, but she's converted. Now, does that make her ethnically Jewish? That's absurd.
Right.
And so I think that this whole issue here is a gambit on the part of Trump to try to mobilize the evangelical base. And of course, he's in some trouble because of the Christian magazine that came out calling for him to leave office.
That was funny.
And playing very much to Netanyahu's hand because he finds Netanyahu somebody who he supports very, very much. So I think you're right, slippery slope. It's a step in the wrong direction. One hope it's only a step. But in these politicized times, it's not healthy in my judgment.
Hey, how do you think a guy like Energy Secretary, I know he's leaving at the end of the year, another week, I guess. How do you think he looks in the mirror and thinks of himself when he says that Donald Trump, or any president for that matter, but was chosen by God? How did they, he can't possibly believe this unless he's doing some sort of a strange steroid. But does he look in the mirror and say, this is what people in my position do, or is he just nuts?
I'm going to write a column next week that talks about the danger with the truth, and one of my quotes will be, "How do you know a politician is lying? Answer: his lips are moving."
Well, yeah, you're not kidding. So it's just.
And so the point here is that politicians will say virtually anything. I mean, for example, hypocrisy is a virtue in the United States. I happen to like Lindsey Graham, but if you go back and see what Lindsey Graham said about Donald Trump
Yeah, I did.
during the campaign of 2016. And now he calls Trump just the greatest president in the world. Hypocrisy in the United States is rather like bad taste, probably the only crimes that warrant the death penalty. But we were filled with hypocrisy here, simply because people are either afraid to tell the truth or feel that because the political divisions are so great that any sign of weakness will mean that the other side is going to gain, and that's not tolerable.
No, it's
and
not.
so I don't want to say the politics of hate have taken over, because throughout America, since the revolution, there have always been extremes. We had a civil war, for goodness sakes. And if you go back and take a look at what people said about Roosevelt,
Yes.
I mean, Roosevelt was hated by
Yes.
a small percentage, a significant percentage of the American public.
Mhm.
We hold Roosevelt in tremendous regard. Or Harry Truman had a 29% rating
When he left
in
office.
1948 when he still won the election. And everybody regarded Truman as a haberdasher from Kansas City who was, this nobody. And so we've always had this sense of hypocrisy. But when it gets out of hand, it becomes very, very damaging to democracy.
Speaking
And
of out of
one
hand.
of the biggest issues we face right now is the fact that civility and compromise seem to be non-existent when it comes to the big things. And that's how we govern ourselves. We can agree, Congress can agree on a trade agreement and things like that, which are really pretty straightforward and are important. And people say, well, there's a sense of compromise. But in the larger issues, there is no civility. And that's what's really destroying Congress right now. And we see that obviously in the impeachment. If you go back to the Clinton impeachment, it was done civilly and with some degree of compromise. Now, without holding any kind of a book for Bill Clinton, the fact is that the whole investigation that went from Whitewater to Monica Lewinsky
I'll never get over
was
that.
a travesty.
Yes, it was.
Was a travesty, and it was sinful, irrespective of whatever wrongdoings the president committed. But that just contributed to where we are right now. Robert Mueller did not have the same authority as the prior special counsel. But even so, this absence of civility and compromise becomes exceedingly difficult in the system of checks and balances that is dependent upon.
I'm going to give you a headache now, but I must say Harlan Ullman's our guest, and we will be asking him before we wrap it up. This is our long-form interview, so we have a lot of topics, and they're all interesting as articulated by him. But I've got to ask you this. How does 52% of the Republican Party think that Trump is a better president than Lincoln? Now, I don't want you to justify it or refute it. I'm trying to understand how they could even believe that in the first place.
I would check that statistic.
Okay, I got it out of
My only response.
Well, I've read it in several newspapers and in an objective aggregator, The Week magazine. I will check the statistic, but if it's true, then what?
I'm speechless.
Okay, then I was hoping you would say that. Otherwise, I was going to check my brain into the Mayo Clinic. All right, I want to go back to the UK.
No.
Go ahead.
No, I just...
Go ahead, sorry. All right, we got another one for you here. You mentioned the UK and Brexit, but I wanted to come back to that. I spend a lot of time, as I'm sure you do, trying to understand why someone who does something, why they would do it, because they must believe in the merits of it. In the best case scenario, what does, besides national pride, and it's a lot, I've spent a lot of time in the UK in my life, and they view themselves somewhat separate from Europe. I know that, and I've been there, and I even like the pound. But what does he hope Boris Johnson to achieve? And what about the partnership with the United States and across the Atlantic, the so-called Atlantic Alliance, and I don't mean it with caps. What does he hope to achieve?
This view almost goes back to Margaret Thatcher. The British believe, or I say those who believe in Brexit, think that regulation from Brussels has really crippled the economy. And why should some bureaucrat dictate the price of eggs in London? That's probably not a good analogy.
No, but we get the
point.
analogy.
And the notion is that if we were not tied down to the EU, Britain would as it did unleash the Industrial Revolution and change the world in the 19th century, Britain can do it again. And that's the driving factor behind Brexit, that Britain will become far more powerful economically. It will be on its own. It will be able to have a larger role once it gets rid of the shackles that have been put in place because of the European Union, period. That's the argument.
Is that
And
at
to a
least,
number of Brits,
is
that
it
makes
plausible?
sense.
Is it a plausible? I mean, it's a plausible argument on its face, but is it
Let me
realistic?
put it like, yeah, it's like jumping the Grand Canyon in 2 bounds. It's plausible, but not achievable, simply because the way that the European Union works, Britain is now going to have to go out and rewrite all its trade treaties with 150, 160 other countries. If it could have a clean break and do so without the nagging difficulties of trying to rewrite all the treaties, that would be one thing. But imagine a spider web and a fly trying to extricate itself from the spider web.
Yeah.
That's a very, very good analogy here, because Britain has to extricate itself, but to extricate itself, it has to put in place another sort of web to integrate itself with all the other countries that, because of the EU, it had relations with. Now it has to redo them. So the administration of leaving becomes so great that it may be impossible. It's rather like a divorce.
Yeah, I was thinking of
when,
that.
unfortunately, the financial arrangements are such that both parties are going to be put in penury by the nature of the divorce. Now, that's not true for the EU, but extrication becomes probably impossible. Now, if the British can extricate themselves satisfactorily and with minimum damage, then the argument that Britain on its own could be more successful than Britain in the EU might work. But I just don't see how they're going to be able to do that without imposing huge damage. The Bank of England has already said that property values will decline by 35 or 40% once they leave. Now, if that's true, some stage they're going to get back, but whether they can overcome the damage that will be done to their economy and enough time to be able to reap the benefits is the issue. And at this stage, I think it's not going to be a very good bet, but that's the course on which Britain is launched.
Wow. It is 9:44. We're talking with Harlan Ullman during our long-form interview, internationally renowned national security expert, the military, politics, etc. One more question on the economy, and then we'll look towards the positive things. You talked about it earlier, but I put it on my little list here because one of the things as an old Wall Street guy that I worry about and haven't really had a chance to investigate. But being an old Wall Street guy, I'm going to throw some factors I'm aware of out there. One, when the gap between the market value, the market cap, which is what the stock exchange says a company's worth, and what they're worth intrinsically if you break them up, and I'm talking about cash flow,
Of course.
I'm talking about money in the bank, projected revenue.
Right.
When that gap gets wide, it's scary. That's number one. Number two, that gap is often widened too because a lot of companies take their profit and they buy back their stock. Two, a lot of investment funds have no alternatives where to put their money. The bond market isn't the best place right now. That drives up the price, and it does it electronically. Massive and massive amounts of money increase the gap between the market cap and the true value of a firm. This scares the living daylights out of me as an old Wall Street guy.
Well, I haven't looked. What's the current price earnings ratio in the Dow?
You know, I don't know. I don't know offhand, but it's pretty big. And I'm just.
I would say it's probably about 20. I would say it's about 20 to 1. I don't know that.
Yeah, well, it's got to be up there somewhere. Yeah.
Historically, it's been around 13 to 1.
Yep.
So now, whenever you have an exaggerated price earnings ratio, it means that stocks are more dear in terms of their price, but not necessarily their value. And my point we talked about. When you have $1 trillion of cash that's being thrown in the economy every year and very, very low interest rates, that's one of the reasons why stock prices are high, because as you note, it's the only place you really can put your money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wouldn't say that this is a bubble, but I would say that at some stage there has to be a recalculation.
Oh, absolutely. There has to be what we call it a correction, because that 22, you came up with one of the hard numbers. That spread is scary. People need to keep their eye on it, because I remember and I got burned by it. The market bubble. There's always this confluence of two things: the value of a company and then the speculation on it doing better. The biggest extreme versions
Absolutely.
we saw were back during the tech bubble, where people were throwing money at stocks that had no revenue. And they didn't
Of course.
understand it. They looked at the stock market. They didn't understand it, and then they got killed. Well, this has much more solid foundation, but still, this is at another, if you will, if it were a building, we're on a higher floor, true, with a solid foundation, but a gap is a gap is a gap. That's scary, and people don't get it.
And once the merry-go-round stops,
yeah,
once it stops, and it will at some stage, then you're going to have a complete change, and there's going to be a compression in the stock market.
And another thing about the jobs, I mean, the economy's doing pretty well, and we'll give the president, as we didn't give Obama when he brought the market back from 7,000 to 20. I never got any credit for that. It was something else, and now it's the president. But we'll give him that. But the fact of the matter is, all these jobs that are out there, I get the lists, I get the emails because of what I do. I can get minimum wage right now at Amazon. I can get minimum wage at UPS. I can get minimum wage on a customer service line. No one's offering jobs, even to someone with my resume, making six figures doing this, that, or the other thing. They don't exist. There aren't a lot of them.
Well, there are, but the point is that they're not for everybody.
Right.
And so you have a lot of people who are working at the very, very low end
Yeah.
of the wage scale,
That's
and
my
therefore people have to have multiple jobs. But to reiterate, if you have huge tax cuts, if you put $1 trillion back in the economy, that's around 4% of GDP.
Yes.
If you cut regulations, if you have low interest rates, it's not that the economy shouldn't be doing well. The economy should be doing far better than it's doing right now. That's my argument, to make the case that things are not as well as they should be. I think the economy, if it were doing well, would be growing at 4 or 5 or 6% a year. It's lucky to make 2%. That should tell people something.
All right. It's time for the positive part of our interview. We've got 10 minutes left with Harlan Ullman. It's 9:49. It's 36 degrees here across Westchester County and the surrounding region. This is Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. Okay. What are you optimistic about? And is this going to be longer than 30 seconds, I hope?
There are always huge opportunities. And my concern is that we're not going to be able to seize these opportunities simply because politics are being driven by ideology, and ideology really eschews knowledge and understanding of the issues. There are huge opportunities that we could be reaching with China. I think because of the president's fixation with deficits, trade deficits, the agreement we're going to have with China, if we have one, is not going to be particularly good to our advantage. We have opportunities within NATO and Europe to build up the alliance, but I'm not sure that those opportunities are going to be realistic. We have huge opportunities to develop our infrastructure, but unfortunately, both parties have been unable to do that for 3 years. And so it seems to me that the one bright spot is that somebody has to seize on these opportunities and come up with a winner. I don't care what it is, to show that this economy in this country can still function well. And I think once we have a real success on our hands, that could be contagious. And I still think that the infrastructure is one area to do so. Whether we have somebody with the vision and the ability in Congress or in the White House to be able to make that leap, I don't know. My concern is that we are going to be super consumed with the election. And it's conceivable that rather like 2016, we could end up with two candidates in which neither is really going to be anybody who's going to be particularly good for the country. And the winner will be determined by either a question of ideology or who's the least worst. And so I'm not sure that we're going to make full use of the potential opportunities, but certainly they are there.
Of the men and women that you know, and you know a lot of these people, is there anyone, I know we've talked often about the former Secretary of State and General, but who's out there that if just not don't pick it out of a hat, even though we may not know them. Is there someone out there, if they could be president, you would nominate them tomorrow? Someone who has
Oh, I'm sure there are. We've had this discussion before of the likely politicians, because Colin Powell, John Kerry, quite frankly, are too old and are not going to become. Having said that, Bernie Sanders is not in the springtime of youth either.
No, nor
I
is
think Mike Bloomberg and John Kasich are the two people I see immediately who would have the ability, I think, to be presidential. And I'm sure there are lots of other people. As I look around the Congress, in some ways, in terms of the impeachment hearings, I was impressed with some members of the Congress, more so than I thought, because I thought that they were very, very thoughtful. But I didn't have any real knowledge of them beforehand. And so I'm sure there are some very, very good people in the Congress, but for whatever reasons, their visibility has been so restricted that they have not yet risen to the top.
Well,
yet.
a guy
So
like
I'm sure
Jordan.
that the country is.
A guy like Jordan has more street cred than the more intelligent of them. It's weird, but I guess he's.
And I wish he'd show some respect for Congress by wearing a coat occasionally. I find it offensive in his shirt sleeves. I mean, he's no longer a wrestling coach. He's supposed to be a member of the House of Representatives.
But that's his brand,
But that's my own view.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, because Colin Powell, I always thought would have been a good president. And
I think he would have been a very good president.
What about someone? Now, I had the former Secretary of State, and Condoleezza Rice has a great resume. Now, I thought she was a terrible in her first job in terms of the National Security Council, but I thought she was a decent Secretary of State. But what is she really like? We only know what we read.
I don't know her that well, so I really cannot comment firsthand on that. And I don't think that she's presidential. I think that when she was National Security Advisor, she was certainly cowed by Rumsfeld and by Cheney,
Yep.
and to some degree by Collin. But she's not a politician, and you have to be an actual politician if you're going to be president. And her qualities are academic and intellectual.
Yeah.
As an advisor,
She's a
not
think
as somebody
tanker.
who's going to be an elected official.
Okay, because
I wouldn't say think tank, but she's more cerebral and hands-on. And you've got to be a retail politician if you're going to be a good president.
Well, it does seem so. Anything else you'd like to add as we look into the new year? Some of the countries we can't do the whole world in one visit, but is there any place in the world that you think might light up in 2020 that we haven't talked about?
I would say that too often Americans tend to think in terms of making enemies when enemies and really don't exist to that degree. We don't understand the weaknesses in China and Russia. And I'm very, very concerned that our national strategy is focused on competition with two adversaries. And I would not view either of them as adversaries. I would view them as significant countries with whom we have to deal. But realizing that in many ways they are playing from weaknesses. We've talked about China with a huge underclass population, shadow banking, all sorts of debt. That Belt and Road has got to work to stimulate the economy. They have hundreds of thousands of riots a year. They're a huge problem. Similarly, Russia has got the GDP of Florida. And so we exaggerate the potential of our adversaries. We don't look at them objectively enough. And we don't really do that when we look at most situations. We tend to be too biased one way or the other. And so I think my wish would be that we're far more objective in how we view both domestic policies and foreign policies. And we do it not from an ideological or an American view.
Hey, I lost you there for a second. You still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we our connection went a little odd. But you know what? As in the immortal words of Howard Stern, when he's done with a great cast, he says, "You've said it all, and you've done a great job today, Harlan. I wish you the very best for the new year. I'm anxious for a new book."
And you too, Bob.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all your contributions to the program. And once again, if your schedule permits, we'll do Thursday next week instead of Wednesday because of the holiday, if you're available. Thank you so very much, Harlan Ullman, everybody. You too, sir. All righty, that pretty much wraps it up for today. But let's give credit where credit is due. And first of all, we need to take a look at the weather. And as you know, our final weather report is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. This bottom of the hour and top of the hour is also brought to you by Aging Issues Radio, Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Khan, and Plug-in Virtual Reality, and of course Dominic's Fine Cigars. Tomorrow they will bring you Jake's Picks of the Week. We'll also talk with Stephen Callis tomorrow. Hezi Aris, the publisher and the editor of the all these different newspapers of the the Westchester County Post.com, Janelle Albritton, and more. This is Radio Westchester. I'm Bob Marrone. Thank you so much for listening today. And as for the rest of you, well, we'll see you tomorrow.